Okay, all right. Welcome, everybody, and good evening. Hope everybody's doing well and being well. Tonight, the City Council Committee on Finance. We're going to begin this meeting June 1st, 2020. It's a Monday. We're going to begin this meeting. Could I have a roll call, please, Madam Clerk?
Chairman Iglesias.
Present.
Vice Chairwoman Ryan.
Present.
Councilman
Present.
Councilman Anthony.
Present.
Councilman Taylor.
Here.
We have 5 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Let the record reflect that President Pro Tem Carrera is present. The Internal Auditor is present. The Treasurer is present. Councilman Espinal is present. Councilwoman Kerwin's present. I think, anybody? Let's see. The Internal Auditor, Gina Costa, is present. And I believe do we have the City Solicitor on the line? Mr. Solicitor, are you here, sir? What is his name? Kenny, are you on the line?
I'm on the line.
All right, thank you.
Yes,
And the City
yeah,
Solicitor,
I'm on the line.
Great, thank you. Okay, so as we move forward, I'd ask the committee. I want to get to the. I know Mercer's come before the committee a couple of times. I want to get to the Mercer conversation first, and then I'd like to go to actually the other part of the agenda dealing with the opening up of city government in a safe and efficient manner, and then we'll get to the other two departments. So could I have a motion to take up the Benefits Department and Mercer first?
So moved.
By Vice Chair, there is a second.
Second.
By Councilwoman Castillo and Taylor. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Like the record reflect. So, going to, who do we need to swear in? I presume Mancini, and who else from that point? Mr. Mancini, can you give us some guidance on who's going to be sworn in on this conversation?
So on the Mercer conversation, Mr. Chairman, be myself, Mr. Matt Pukel, who's representing Mercer, my Finance Director, Sarah Silveria, the Director of HR and Benefits, Emmanuel Echevarria, and his Associate Director, Stacy Roberts, will be speaking or being available for questions with respect to the self-insured medical fund.
Thank you, Mr. Mancini. So, Mr. Clerk, could you swear all those individuals in? And after you get sworn in, I'd ask, starting from Mr. Mancini on down, if you could state your name and your position for the record. Mr. Clerk?
Could you please raise your right hand or swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I do.
Mancini?
Lawrence J. Mancini, Chief Financial Officer, City of Providence.
Mr. Echevarria?
Sarah
Oh.
Silveria, Finance Director.
Mr. Emmanuel Echevarria?
Emmanuel R. Echevarria, Director of Human Resources. I do.
Ms. Roberts?
Stacy Roberts, Benefits Manager.
And Mr. Pukel?
Matthew Pukel, Principal Mercer Consultant.
Thank you. Also, let the record reflect that Ernie Almonte is also on the line. Thank you. So, Mr. Mancini, how do you want to...
Chairman, if I may,
Yeah.
I apologize. I was remiss in introducing Stephen Rotundo, Deputy Director of Human Resources, is with us this evening. In the event that he needs to attest to any item, I would like to have him sworn in as well.
Great. Mr. Rotundo?
Here.
No, Mr. Clerk, could you swear him in, please?
Mr. Rotundo, could you please raise your right hand or swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
All right, thank you. I guess, Mr. Mancini, do you want to give a quick overview of what Mercer is, what it does, and then maybe you can go to Mr. Pukel to get into more detail of it?
I'd be glad to. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Good evening. This evening, the committee has invited Mercer, who is the city's healthcare actuary, and assist us with compiling benefit information, including information that's necessary to establish the self-insured medical budget. This evening, We're joined by Mr. Matthew Pukel, who has handled this account either in partnership with formerly Mr. David Chamberlain, and now under his own direction. Mercer has had this account nearly all of the last 8, maybe 10 years. They have guided the city, Mr. Chairman, I believe skillfully, in compiling the necessary attributes of a good and well-projected medical budget. Each of the last 4 years, we have been fortunate to finish below budget with surpluses that have been reserved in the self-insured medical fund. I think you'll hear tonight from Mr. Pukel that similarly, the FY20 budget is expected to finish below budget. And that's good news for the city. It'll assist us in 2 ways. It'll help us further continue with reserves of the medical insurance fund, but also to be used to offset some expense in the general fund if we find it necessary to do so under these trying times during the COVID-19 pandemic. With that, Mr. Chairman, I would turn the discussion over to Mr. Pukel, who can walk you through. I believe he has provided you with a PowerPoint presentation for your guidance, and I think he's available to answer any and all questions.
Thanks, Larry. Appreciate it.
So before we go there, Mr. Mancini, can you just tell us the status of present health budget this year? How much did we plan on spending on the self-insured side? How much have we spent to date? And what's our projection for the rest of the fiscal year, which is basically 30 days or so?
Yeah, so the entire budget for FY20, Mr. Chairman, was built at $107,232,754, and that's the entire city, both city general fund, school, water, and workforce solutions. In total, the budget at last report, based on information that was shared through April, will probably project with some adjustments in the range upwards of between 5 and 7 million. Some of that depends on any claims that have not yet been processed. And then, of course, Mr. Chairman, with good fortune, with 30 days remaining in the month, today being June 1st, we've seen this in some years past where we were pretty well through the month of May, and then we had some unusual high-cost claims. I do feel, and I'm sure Mr. Pukel and Mr. Echevarria will speak to this, I do feel that we've taken some of the uncertainty out of that with stop-loss insurance, and I think many of these claims can be spoken to. Mr. Pukel, I would like to have him give his testimony, but we are seeing some reduced utilization. I think much of that based upon during the COVID-19 pandemic, there are folks that have delayed elective procedures, and that probably is showing up to some of the unusually larger surplus or projected surplus. And then that could mean on the opposite end, perhaps there'll be a queuing up of services that would continue maybe after stage 2 and stage 3 reopening of general government and business. But for the time being, we are significantly confident that we will finish the year in a significantly budgeted, balanced budget position with surplus.
Mr. Mancini, to date, what have we spent at this time, you said?
I don't have that exact figure information, but I believe we've spent the equivalent of 80% of the budget, 80 to 85% of the budget. Maybe Ms. Silveri can provide the information for me, the year-to-date totals.
Ms. Silveri, do you have that number? And while you're looking at that, and then I would ask that, I guess, in lieu of the fact that government's pretty much been shut down for the past 3 months and still is shut down, or I'm talking about the city government, that is. I know all elective surgery has been pretty much put on hold in all the hospitals practically, right? So I have to presume there's even a bigger potential savings, but that doesn't necessarily mean running into next fiscal year, that's just going to be pushed off. Is that right, Mr.?
There is that distinct possibility, Mr. Chairman. I think I had just said that a few minutes ago that the surplus was holding well throughout the year. Let me be very clear about that. This surplus is not due in large part to COVID-19 delay of elective surgeries or elective procedures. The surplus was holding and trending very well throughout the entire fiscal year, as early as the first quarter, and it continued at the appropriate range. It is further enhanced by the COVID-19 non-elective surgeries, I should say the non-utilization of elective surgery procedures. But you're absolutely correct. There could be some pent-up delay in utilization as we move into the new fiscal year, or as the time permits in the opening of stage 2 and stage 3 processes here in Rhode Island. So,
And the upcoming budget, how much have we budgeted, that number for?
it was a slight change, about a 1% change over the prior year. It's close to, Mr. Pukel could give that information. I believe it's close to $108 million. And
Is that right? So, Mr. Gia, what's been the trend? The last 5 years, not including the upcoming year, have we been meeting that number, or we've been still, or every year we have somewhat of a surplus?
Well, Mr. Chairman, let me start by saying that even under best practices, the current administration of the State Auditor General has held regular conferences with finance directors and managers and have talked about the need for self-insured plans to have a surplus reserve between 5, 10, and 12% of the annual operating budget of the self-insured fund. We've been fortunate in the last 3 years, now heading into the 4th year, to have 3 consecutive multi-million-dollar surpluses that have ranged from $3 million in one case, or $3 or $4 million. So to date, we have close to $7 million in reserve. If we were to approach a $10 million percentage of our self-insured budget, that will be closer to $10 million. And I believe that we will achieve that, and I believe that we should honor that, because what that does is it puts us in good stead with regulators and those who manage and mind these particular practices. And I think it's well for the city to do that. We may take some of that back in the general fund, depending upon where we land at operating position, and we'll make that decision once June 30 comes to a close. But the trend has been that we have been on target and properly within the range of a balanced budget. Even on $106 million, as Chairman, a $1 million surplus represents only a 1% change. That seems to be standard as far as a percentage of budget variance, but we've enjoyed a fair amount of surpluses over the last 3 years.
Thank you, Mr. Mancini. So, can you provide, or an internal order, can you put together an age report for the last 5 years? And I want to see how much room is in there for the upcoming fiscal year.
Absolutely.
So I'd like to get a sense of where we are with that. Maybe we just keep it, level funded for the upcoming year, or maybe bring it down to a little bit, maybe 106 million. We create a little more savings in this upcoming fiscal year budget, especially if the trend is it's pretty even. So we need to look at that, Madam Internal Order. Put that on your radar, okay?
Yes,
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, with that said, and to your point, while that's a good point, we should be mindful of the fact that each of the last several years, with proper guidance and tutelage from MRSA, we have done everything in our power to delay or to increase the budget by amounts that would be less than industry standards and industry trends, based on the good management of the self-insurance fund, based on good luck with medical claims and claims utilization. But oftentimes we are advised that the trends could be greater or higher than what we budgeted. Really, it's a good combination of proper budgeting and skill, and I think some experience with the claims and insurance claim loss. So.
The employee contributes a portion to this. Is this correct?
The employee,
right?
yes, they do. Yes, they do.
So, knowing what we know about what's happening in the finances of the city and actually the whole world, and I don't know what the administration is doing. I mean, I know you're only talking to 1033, but have any of you decided to go talk to the unions again and reopen that portion, even in a temporary basis, maybe for a year or two, where they may either contribute a little bit more in order to ease some of the issue? Also, the second piece is COVID-19. Any of this money at all, any healthcare money, is it reimbursable at any form or fashion for this COVID-19 proposed, the money that's being presented up in the state, the 1.2? Considering that I think they're saying that police and fire are potentially eligible to be reimbursed during this time, could also their health care benefits potentially be reimbursable also?
Yeah, I would defer to the HR team and MRSA for the exact legal interpretation. I believe there is opportunity, but I'll defer to the team on that.
Thank you, Mr. Nassini. So, who first would like to take, let's take the first question. Are anybody in administration approaching the unions to discuss the fact, to stop, besides talking about work share, maybe a furlough, the idea of reopening the conversation about healthcare issues where maybe for the first year or 2 years, I know, on a year, at least 12 months, if they pay a little another a percentage. Is that happening at all? The answer is no, it's no, which is, anybody know in this room?
Yeah, so when it comes to healthcare co-shares, we're in active conversations with FOP as their contract is up for renegotiation about increasing the health insurance premium co-share amount. With the other unions, the answer is no at this time. Mr. Pukel can explain a little bit more, but the main reason why is because those are items that are part of collective bargaining agreement contracts, and they're typically tied to statistical evaluations on increases, and they have to justify the weight of the claims under those lines. Matthew, can you add something?
I recognize that. It's just that because of what's happening financially, these are opportunities to reopen negotiations. For example, will you have a job next month? You may not have a job next month. You may not have opportunities next month. So it's like the trade-off, furloughs, no jobs, layoffs, stuff like that. Or would you be willing to do a little give back? So I mean, I've been talking about for the past 3 months with the administration. I'm going to still talk about this issue until the administration finally does something and actually talks to all the unions and starts getting down to the nitty-gritty and trying to renegotiate. Here's an opportunity to renegotiate some of those horrific contracts that have been negotiated in the past. Perfect example. School department's not doing it, and they have a unilateral right to do it. The Raleigh Act, we have to reopen. Now you actually have a legitimate reason why to say what's going on, but I'll take a second. The second question is, I'll go ask for the COVID-19 issue. Is any of this money, for example, I know they mentioned earlier that police and fire, some expenses are reimbursable to the COVID-19 for the past 3 months, and I presume for the next 2 or 3, 4 months. Is any of the medical expenses reimbursable? Do we know the answer to that question?
Matt, do you know the answer to that question? I do not.
So that's a great question, Chairman Iglesias. Not that I've heard. That's something we could definitely look into and get back some additional feedback. What the perception is, again, COVID-19 as common nowadays as it feels, it's still relatively new and things are constantly still changing. But we could definitely reach out to our ERISA group at Mercer to see where we think things will end up, if that might be an opportunity for all groups, all organizations down the road for reimbursement, and we can get back to you with that.
Thank you. All right. So do you want any questions on that line of questions this time? I'll let them get into it's exhibit for the committee members. We already entered into the exhibit record. It's exhibit B as in boy 16. And you look at it, the finance committee, it's the Mercer report. Committee members, if you can see it, and also for the public, okay? And also, 1 second, Mr. Clerk, did you put the email address for the public if they want to? Okay. And just a reminder to everybody that there's an email address to the clerk that the public wants to send in questions. We're going to do our part to get them answered. So just forward it to the clerk's office and we'll begin that process. Committee members, do you have your exhibit?
Yes, I do.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
So, Mr. Fiscal, can you want to go through this? This is your exhibit. This is your work product. Is this correct, sir? Do you want to take us through it, please?
Sure. I would. Yeah, that'd be great. Oh, great. You're sharing. Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Just pull it up here on my screen. Now, does everyone have access to it? I don't know if there's a way, or just want to share a screen.
They should all have access to it actually on the city clerk's webpage. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Clerk. And you go on the City of Providence webpage, you go to the city's clerk department, and Mr. Clerk, do you want to further define it for them?
There is a link to the webpage at the top of the agenda for today. So there's a quick link that you can type that into any browser and get all of the budget documents that have been submitted to date, and you can download this document, which is B16, as the chairman mentioned.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you.
Mr. Kelly.
Great. So
You have the mic, sir.
Thank you very much. So I'll just go through it. I'll make sure I call out the pages so everyone can follow along. Starting off on slide labeled number 1, it's the first slide immediately following the title slide. As Mr. Mancini was mentioning earlier, the budget for fiscal 20, at the bottom right corner is showing the $107.2 million. Again, this is data when we provided this for the last financial, for the last meeting. It was data through March, and we annualized that data. So again, we were estimating about a $7.5 million. You're currently running under budget. So a surplus of approximately $7.5 million. Again, I could just speak highly this fiscal year compared to all previous fiscal years, the past couple fiscal years actually. Overall, the utilization has been running much more favorably. I know the number of changes and initiatives has taken place. Now with COVID, this number of the budget is it's increasing as well. The essentially surplus is increasing as well, just sheerly because of the elimination of a large number of utilizations.
Okay.
On slide number 2, this is labeled fiscal 21 projections, active and retiree. Now I'll kind of break this slide down. There's a lot of information on this slide, so I really want to break it down to highlight 3 areas. In the light blue shaded areas to the left, you'll see actives, retirees, and fully insured. The active and retirees represent the self-funded portion of your medical and pharmacy claims. And the fully insured are essentially the Plan 65 and the blue chip, the post-65 fully insured groups. Overall, the increase to budget for the actives, and you see the active total in the gray shaded row, is looking about a 2.3% increase over the current budget. Retiree total is actually a reduction of just over 6%. And with regards to all self-funded claims, which is active and retirees total, it's about a 0.3% reduction to the budget, or just under $300,000 reduction. Fully insured is a fixed premium. You pay a premium, and it's pulled with other products. That we're projecting about a 14% increase. It's post-65, much higher trend. And the overall impact to the budget is, to Larry, you mentioned earlier, Mr. Mancini, the 0.9% increase, or about $916,000. With this, we account for a number of items. We count for compound trend at 4.5%. Typically, industry trend for pre-65 groups, so for normal active groups, typically is anywhere between 9 and 11%. City of Providence's typical trend typically ranges between 2.5 to 5%. Providence has been consistently outperforming industry, national, regional trends over the past, I'd say, 5 years. We use 4.5% trend. As we may know, there could always be a spike in claims. We do know for certainty too that the city did have its first $1 million plus claim as of this year as well.
Mr. Vikel?
Yes.
Mr. Vikel, when you say City of Providence is outperforming, you mean in a positive sense or a negative sense?
Positive sense. So think of it this way: for every dollar that the City of Providence spends year over year, so next year that dollar might be worth, call it $1.02, between $1.02 and $1.05, so 2 to 5%. Typically, industry-wide, you're looking at $1.09 to $1.11 because trend is higher. So you're performing in a very positive sense year over year.
And then you said the City of Providence had its first a $1 million claim.
Correct.
Is that what you said?
Correct. Since in a number of years, I want to say since the early 2012, 2013, maybe was the last time I could think of it. And that happened. It was incurred in the previous fiscal year. and just paid this fiscal year. And because of the contracts that we were able to negotiate and we managed, and we put in place, the city does have that $1 million stop loss, which I know we've talked about in this committee a number of times. So any amount above that $1 million would be covered.
Are there
100% by stop
Are
loss.
there any big claims pending right now?
There are a number of claims. There are at least 2 claims, I believe, over $750,000 incurred in the previous fiscal year that are being paid this fiscal year. In this fiscal year, we typically track claims over 250,000. There are a handful of claims over 250,000, but again, for a group of your size, as well as in the region that we're in, the Northeast region in the United States, which is the most costly region in the country, that would be expected, and that's always accounted for and understood in our budgeting process.
Are any of those claims, can they be bifurcated with this fiscal year's money and the upcoming fiscal year's money?
So I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Can the payout of those claims be bifurcated utilizing a portion of this fiscal year's money and the upcoming fiscal year's money? So we can bifurcate it, and we can also modulate the impact on this budget and the upcoming budget.
So except essentially what you're asking, is there a way that we could essentially manage
Well, we're so close to the end of the fiscal year. That's what I'm asking. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, so with COVID, the challenge right now is, and we've done some analysis for Providence, is there's still a bit of unknown with regards to COVID cases and the overarching expenses, as well as for fiscal 21, which we're focusing on, how that will impact it. So we did an initial analysis for Providence when everything kind of started, when we started learning and understanding, and our actuarial team, Mercer's actuarial team, did some analysis for Providence, and we estimated the potential impact, which we accounted for in this projection and we're comfortable with. For Providence, the impact initially, we were estimating a range from a low range of about $1.5 million impact to overall costs, to if it was off the charts, where Rhode Island probably doesn't even have enough facilities, hospitals, and beds to accommodate these number of patients, it could be up to over 18 million. But again, that $18 million is a catastrophic scenario, which at this point in time, which we didn't really know as much back then, we realize is not quite as likely at this point. And since the initial report we completed, we're actually going through another report currently, which is pointing much closer to that low number, that $1.5 million impact, or even slightly lower impact as a result of COVID. And that accounts for the COVID cases, whether it's inpatient or just the testing, if you will. It also accounts for the reduction in utilization, and essentially in the projections also accounts for these services that these elective services that people aren't getting, that they might be getting those services in the upcoming fiscal year, as well as there's also a limit of ability of beds where these elective services will be able to take place. So 100% of the elective service that might have taken place, you're not going to see 100% taking place next year, simply because there's not going to be enough facilities, and we expect there would be only a portion of that taking place.
Thank you.
Sure. So again, this is the.
You can continue.
Okay, great. So that was a 0.9%, about $915,000 increase. And it takes into account also all the different plan designs and negotiations that took place over the past 12 to 18 months, I'd say. On the next slide, on slide number 3, it really goes through the underwriting assumptions. And I won't read through all of them. I just want to highlight a couple. It is assuming a $1.1 million of the allocating of 1033 and 1339 fixed costs to all the groups within Providence. Again, 1033, 1339 do not absorb the fixed costs. We do compound 4.5% medical and RX trend. It takes into account rebates for pharmacy. We do assume approximately 50 additional police trainees for the upcoming fiscal year, as well as we went through quite an aggressive process with negotiating with the 1033 group in introducing a health reimbursement account, PPO. The initial savings that we were estimating based on guidance that was agreed to, that was provided, was about $1 million. Based on actual utilization, specifically around wellness programs, we changed our estimate to about $600,000 of savings. So we accounted for the impact to the actual savings in the projections as well, and we broke it out on the bottom of page 3, where the majority of savings is coming from the HRA plan, which really promotes consumerism, as we call it, with regards to it, followed by wellness and telemedicine. And I would think that telemedicine in the future, with everything going on today, is going to drive quite a bit more potential savings down the road.
Mr. Bukel, may I ask you a question? I noticed you put in there, assume the 50 police, and I presume that means trainees. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
My question, is your numbers on page 2 acknowledge or take into account attrition? Meaning, what's been the trend for total number of employees retiring and going from, I guess, one health system to 2? Because is it the health system for an employee working, it's their whole family, and then when they go to retirement, do they still have the health care system for the whole family still?
So we do take into account, so we take a look at lagged enrollment. So we look at, we stagger the enrollment to the claims, knowing that if you go to the physician in June 1st, 2020, that claim might not hit the book until August or September of 2020, just simply because of claims lag. And with the 50 retirees, so when we take a look at the 12 months of data projecting forward, because of the size of the city, it should take into account any type of attrition. And the other question I think you had was with regards to the fully insured. So these are all post 65. So typically it is going to be employee and spouse. There's not going to be many instances where you'll have any dependence on the plan, although it could exist. It could exist, and it does to a certain degree. So when we do the projections with regards to that, we do take again account historical 12 months of enrollment data, which should account for any type of attrition or modifications within the different tier structures in projecting the costs going forward. At the end of the day, when we do project the costs, we take the most recent month's data of enrollment and assume that going forward, just so we can get, because again, this is all a point in time. What's unique about the city is when we do develop the budget's frozen in time. So when we take a look at the budget, we take a look at the enrollment, the historical enrollment. But when we come with that budget's always frozen in time, and that's why we ask the certain questions of any type of new trainees or any type of I don't want to call it acquisitions, but significant impacts to enrollment that we would expect going forward. So if there was, we could take that into account in the budgeting process as well.
Okay. Continue, sir.
Great. So any questions on slide 3 with regards to the budgeting? Any additional?
Committee members?
No, Mr. Chair.
No order? Mr. Almonte, do you have any question? Okay, Mr. Clerk, you need to unmute Mr. Almonte.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. I do not have any questions. I'm just writing notes and taking it all in.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
Mr. Bukel?
great, thank you. So in the final slide 4, here, just wanted to really highlight some of the historical and current initiatives that we've worked with the HR group, both current and historical. I know, like, Steve, Sarah, Larry's been there for all these different initiatives and decisions, which really drove the city to where we are today with regards to that low trend number, that 2.5 to 5% number that I'm talking about. Because when I first started working with Providence in, I'd say 2011 maybe, it was definitely a different conversation we'd all be having today, and we had to make a lot of hard decisions, and we've had to do a lot of work to accomplish all of these initiatives, which provided favorable results both for the membership of Providence as well as for the organization Providence itself with regards to saving money, while providing a very high level of benefits. As of recent, again, the most recent changes we've made, one of the largest ones we made was coordination of benefits. It's the second bullet. Estimated annual savings is about $4.5 million. More recently, we focus on driving a telemedicine even before COVID came into play. This is at some point last year, we've really worked hard at working with Blue Cross and getting a telemedicine benefit up and running. Wellness to really drive consumerism, and we're looking to roll that out on a large scale. And with 1033, the health reimbursement account, the PPO plan, again, which drives, again, to more consumerism. And rather than just going to the physician and people paying their copay, what have you, having a better understanding of looking for the highest quality of care for maybe a level of cost that's more reasonable. Stacey, maybe you want to talk about the pension, payroll healthcare, or Emmanuel?
Yeah, sure. So one of the initiatives that we want to try to do is a lot of the school retirees, they currently have to mail in a check for their payment for their benefits. What we're trying to do is those that are in the pension system is set it up so that their medical deductions can be taken out of their pension check from the city. We can do that with part of the population from the school retirees, but the teachers and those administrators that were formerly teachers, they're on the state pension, so we don't have the ability to take that out of a pension check from the city. We are looking and exploring with IT on a way to have an online payment for those teachers so that they can pay versus sending in manual checks each month.
When it comes to the teachers, does the city handle all the active teachers, health, everything, all that stuff still?
Yes.
Yes.
We do.
So now that the city doesn't have any control of the school department, can we charge the school department a fee for all the work we do, since they pretty much just send us a bill, tell us to pay? I mean, why we, since we have no control of the school department, we have no control of anything on that side anymore. They can actually tell us what to do. Why don't we just give them control of all that and just tell them they're on you? No? Is that something we're looking into? Since the city gave up on the school department, it doesn't make any sense to me why we piecemeal in this conversation. Mr. Mancini?
So, Mr. Chairman, there's been a series of conversations associated with the Crowley Act that would include that portion of the appropriation that we've deemed to be above the current maintenance of effort that could, and we hope, would be offset by things just as you mentioned, city services, facility charges, et cetera. And that matter is of the continuing discussion.
All right. Do you know first of all, I commend you for doing that, because I think it's only appropriate. All right. And second thing is, do you know who will be the final arbiter of that question? Is it the commission says yes or no, or do we have to go to a higher authority?
It could be a combination of elected authority here in the city, mayor, maybe council, and ride to its commissioner, and perhaps at the state government level. It may require a intimate determination of Crowley Act provisions, and we are working steadily to determine that answer.
Thank you. Charles, do you have the mic, sir? Want to continue? Ms. Roberts, you all set, your presentation?
Mhm. Yeah.
Any question by committee members on this time?
No, Mr. Chair.
Internal auditor?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I do have a couple of questions.
Yes, please, you have the mic.
This current fiscal year, 2020, you started the wellness program where employees would receive a $300 or $600 refund if they achieve so many directives. Have you gotten a number of how many employees will receive this?
Yes, so actually we get a monthly file from Virgin Pulse and Blue Cross and Blue Shield where we have to look at the required activities versus the optional activities. Right now, as it stands, from the last file that I received through activities through the end of April, there are about 224 employees that would either receive their 300 or 600. The teacher contract actually has a different incentive program. So for the teachers, if there are any teachers that are included in that, they would receive 200, 400. But we do have a low participation amount where we would have to pay out.
Okay. When you get a chance, can you just tell me what that number is? Because it's either 300 or 600, so I don't want to assume one or the other. And go ahead.
Sorry, do you just want the breakdown of who's receiving what?
Yeah, if you could, please.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. I can send that to you tomorrow.
And the levels are between employee and family, the $300 and $600.
Correct. Yeah. So an individual would get either 300 if they're non-school teachers. Anybody that has a spouse could earn an additional 300 for their spouse, and then if they're a single parent family, they would earn 300. It's just the teacher group that only has the 200 for their self or their spouse or their single parent family.
Okay. And could you break down the cost of the 50 recruits in the medical? If
I can, I don't. I'm just taking
Second.
notes while you're talking. Yeah, we can definitely do that. I don't have that for this moment, but is that something we can get back to you with as a follow-up?
That would be perfect. Thank you. That's all, Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Almonte, do you have any questions?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right. Is that it? I think that's it at this point. Committee members, have any other questions on this matter?
No, Mr. Chair, thank you.
All right. So what I'd like to do is, I'd like to go to the actually presentation about how we're going to open up city government in a safe and efficient manner. I think it's pretty important to get into that discussion. So if we could make a motion to go into that piece at this time.
So moved.
Second. By Vice Chair, second by Councilman Taylor. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries, Madam Clerk, unanimously. So why don't we get into, I know we invited several individuals, Madam Clerk, for that. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, and then who did we invite? And then who's gonna talk on this matter? I presume Mr. Mancini still, and the Director of HR, and I presume Mr. Solaris. So why don't we, Mr. Clerk, why don't we swear in the individuals who are going to talk about the subject matter on opening city government?
Yes, could you please raise your right hand and swear under penalty of perjury that the statement shall be give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
And you state your name and for the record and your position, please.
Sabrina Solares, Hand Chief Operating Officer.
Thank you. Anybody else? Is that everybody? Okay, great. So do you have anything as a handout or like a blueprint at this time for the committee and the council?
I had shared some materials with the Chief of Staff earlier today. I can walk through them verbally here, but we had not submitted them to the committee previously, no.
Okay, do you have anything, Mr. Clerk, at all?
Ms. Solares, do you intend those documents that you shared with the Chief of Staff to be made exhibits and public for part of this meeting?
I had not, but I can certainly follow up with the committee afterwards with any documentation they would like to see.
All right, well, let's take one step at a time. So why don't you take us, well, Ms. Solaris, why don't you first tell us what is the status of city government? What's been the status for the past 3 months, and what's the status today, and what are you looking to do in the future? Let's do that.
Of course.
Talk about the past 3 months.
Of course.
Talk us through what's been going on, what's been the policies the city's been implementing, and how it's been running city government and its divisions and units. Let me start with that first, all right?
Of course. For the past 3 months, needless to say, everybody is aware that we made the decision to essentially shut down in-person operations to the best of our ability in the best interest of public health for our employees. During this time, we immediately launched into modifying the operations for things that were necessary in order to continue to serve the public. As an example of that, let's say picking up trash, things of that nature, having our DPW team have conversations with waste management, or determining what it would mean to keep our staff safe. During this time, all of our teams developed plans in order to maintain those services in either a remote fashion and or via coming in very minimal sorts of ways. For an example, one person per vehicle to ensure that there was social distancing, which is something that we wouldn't be able to maintain with multiple people per vehicle. Directors were given several inquiry about what sort of IT, technology, call forwarding, things of that nature they would need in order to accomplish their work. And those requests and work orders were sent through my department and fulfilled by the IT department as well. And so we worked with them, and I commend our IT department on how hard they worked to try to outfit people as much as possible for being able to work remotely when possible. During this time, there have been some people who had needed to go into the office. Needless to say, for instance, the clerk's team has been in the office as they've needed to manage some of the public meetings and to monitor those. And so we tried to keep those things to a minimum. Additionally, some things where we have needed to exchange documents with the public, but wanting to do so in a socially distanced manner, we've installed drop boxes at our main buildings, 444 Westminster, as well as City Hall. And we've also had some ingenuity among our directors to be able to perform other things. As an example, our Board of Licensing Vitals team was able to reactivate being able to do marriage license creatively through a window of City Hall, which is not something we ever imagined that we would be doing, but allowed us the ability to continue to issue those things while also keeping our staff and constituents as safe as possible. Throughout this time, a lot of teams have also taken the opportunity to see how they can modify their services in a digital manner to provide those services remotely. So again, going back to Vital, Vital Records made sure to push out information about using tools such as Vital Check, which is a service in which people can request vital records online if they're able to, if they have access to internet and otherwise. So without getting into each individual department, that is a flavor of what has happened over the last 3 months in order to keep services available to the best of our ability during this time.
Thank you. Committee members, do you have any questions? I'll let the record reflect that President Matos is present. Committee members, do you have any questions at this time, or do you want?
No, I'll hold off, Mr. Chair, for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. All right. So why don't you tell us now where we are today, right now, at this moment?
Sure. Today, we are preparing for the reopening of City Hall. As the state has moved into stage 2, we've been in conversation with Department of Health, looking at CDC guidelines, looking at OSHA guidelines to work with our Human Resource Department to develop several policies. For an example, mask wearing policy, re-entry into the building, how we would go about screening temperature of employees coming into public buildings and so on. With that information in hand, we have provided directors with thorough guidance on what to expect, rather what our expectations are for what it is safe for employees to return to city business. And so they are going through a process with my team in Human Resources now to evaluate how to best modify their offices in terms of low liftings, making sure that waiting areas have socially distanced chairs, all the way through to that desk needs to move over there, or installing a plexiglass barrier in a public office, having markers on the ground so that when people are queuing up, much like they would in a supermarket, are able to stay distanced. And so our Human Resources Department, along with PEMA, with guidance from CDC. I've been working with public property to get these policies underway and start modifying facilities so that we're able to do that in the safest manner. And so we are working towards the reopening tentatively of June 22nd. That, of course, is barring that data, of course, continue to support the progress that we've made with public health. I say, of course, that, we're preparing for heading into this in the most sustainable way possible, and that we expect to be in a holding pattern with this next phase until there is perhaps a treatment or a vaccine for the public so that we can keep people safe.
Okay. Do you have, that's what you're planning on now moving forward, right? All right, so committee members have any questions? Oh, excuse me, Councilman Taylor, then I have the special council treasurer, and then Michelle would have to go. So Mr. Taylor, Councilman Taylor?
Thank you, Chairman. So June 22nd would be all of City Hall would be open?
Yes. So to clarify, yes, all of City Hall would be open per the guidance that we are providing to directors based on what we've received from CDC and DOH. We will be staffing about 50% capacity in person. That does not mean that only 50% will be working. That means that 50% would be present in the building at a time via staggered work shifts. In order to not overcrowd offices, because there's only so much we can do by distancing offices, et cetera. But all services would be open as of that day.
What happened to the June 5th date? Why did that get pushed back 2 weeks?
I'm not familiar with the June 5th date, Councilman.
Well, June 5th, June 8th was the day that City Hall. I guess my question is, why are we just putting in the tape and the plexiglass and everything now when we knew at some point City Hall was going to be open? Why wasn't that done March, April, or May? Why
It's a fair question. Our team is certainly, we tried to be smart about pacing ourselves in this and tried to be creative about shifts and getting these things done. What I want to say is that we didn't want to rush here. We wanted to make sure we had the guidance right on this. And so we've been really diligent about going through everything that's come from these organizations that are bigger than ours, who are certainly expert in providing us with these things. And now that we feel like we have the guidance that we need to be able to do this, we're implementing those things. Had we felt that we had all of the guidance that we needed to do ahead of this time, then we would have started earlier.
Okay. And Chairman, is it all right to ask a question now about the furlough days, or when do you want me to ask that? Does she want to explain it, I guess?
Yeah, sure, why not? If you, well, let me ask, does the treasurer have a question about furlough days or?
About reopening. About reopening.
Mr. Committee, Councilman Taylor, can I have the treasurer ask his follow-up?
Sure, that's fine.
We can go back to that. Okay?
Yep.
So, treasurer?
So I've been raising issues with the Recorder of Deeds office for quite a while. When's the Recorder of Deeds going to open to the public?
Larry, and it looks like you want to say something there.
Thank you, Sabrina. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Treasurer, as you know, we had an arrangement that basically provided a private party transaction with a properly named title search attorney who was already under contract to the city of Providence that was doing title searches for the benefit of the city's annual tax sale. That process was installed in order to limit severely the amount of entrance into the building by people who would be coming in the building, who would be working in the recorder's room, which is anyone who's familiar with the Recorder of Deeds room. They can do online searches through 2004. Anything previous to 2004 that's not on record will require a manual search, which really means multiple touches of manual books and records in multiple locations inside a room that is not really equipped to handle the current conditions of COVID-19. With that, we had a single attorney who was able to provide that service. While there were some members of the private title world that was not pleased with that, I can tell you that as of today and really in the process of the past week or so, we have been accepting, not quite by appointment, but by invitation or by email request, other alternative means, whether they can do it through electronic screenshots. If they can provide a title stop, we'll work with them to do that at basically no charge. But by the time we return to the building opening on June 22nd, the city recorder of deeds has developed a plan for safe re-entry to the recording area, which may require them to socially distance outside the recorder room, given the space that's provided inside the recorder room. They will have to be proper personal protection equipment, including masks and gloves. They are touching books that many of them are historic in nature, and they would need to be disinfected in a safe manner as well. Much of that was under discussion and development over the past several weeks, and we did our best to do what was proper for both the protection of the public property, and the employees who work in that area. And may I add, Mr. Chairman, that office has been generally fully staffed nearly 5 days a week between in-person employees and those who are working from remote in an effort to assist not only title searches, but the vast majority of title recordings, as it means so that it would not inhibit business and commerce. So to answer the treasurer's question, we are already in a structured manner getting that work done as we have been, and we're going to begin opening and widening the area for additional title searches located inside the building.
Okay, thank you for that. But it doesn't, there's a few different issues with that. One is that the contractor that you picked to do the closings is not recognized by a number of different title companies. I did put in writing to the Recorder of Deeds director that there's at least 150 closings that are put on hold just from one title company. And obviously that's causing, it's causing a financial hardship on at least 150 people. I'm sure that's going to cause foreclosures. I'm sure that people can't buy houses. I'm sure that there's a, so people can't sell houses, buy houses. So we're all locked up. I believe that we're at this point one of the only organizations that are not allowing for people to go into the deeds room. I think that it's a problem. I think that the contract that was awarded under a no bid contract is a problem. I don't even think that gentleman can handle all of the closings. I know somebody who spoke to him and said that he wasn't aware that he was supposed to be doing all these closings. So I just want to continue to make statements that the Recorder of Deeds office, at least one attorney per title company should be allowed to go in, whether it's 1 day a week. I think there's 5 big title insurance companies, but they're refusing to do closings. They're refusing to guarantee titles. They don't know this guy that's doing the title search. So I just want to put that on record.
Duly noted, and Mr. Chairman, for the record, the Recorder's Office is immediately working to reopen the recording room under safe practices, and we'll work with any title attorney, and we'll begin doing that as immediate as last week.
Well, that's not what Mr. Murphy said. So you should clarify that with Mr. Murphy.
I certainly did, and I will.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
President Pro Tem Correa.
Yes, I have a question for Sabrina. Sabrina, the June 22nd date, does that also include 444 Westminster, 700 Allens Avenue in the public safety complex for people to go in to conduct business?
Yes, Councilman, it does.
Thank you.
I have, Internal Treasurer, is your hand still up? Can you take it down to Treasurer?
No, my hand's not up, but I see Mr. Almonte looking.
No, I know. I have Mr. Almonte.
Okay.
Again,
All right.
I have the Vice Chair, then Mr. Almonte, then back to Councilman Taylor. Vice Chair?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Solaris, could I ask, how many departments do you manage? How many departments fall under your purview?
For day-to-day management, without checking the list, I'd say right off the top of my head, it's about between 10 to 12.
Could you name some of those departments, please?
Absolutely. Parks, Recreation, Public Property, Purchasing, Sustainability, Board of License, Human Resources.
So in your response to our chairman, you indicated your activity in the past 3 months. And one of the statements you made that you've been modifying your operations in your departments, that your teams have been developing plans to ensure the work of the city is getting done. I'm paraphrasing a bit, but you did say that your teams were developing plans. Where are those plans? And what are those plans? What plans have you made in the past 3 months for the operation of the departments under your purview?
Directors were given some initial guidance about what they needed to do in order to keep staff safe. And they worked with us to do an audit on what sort of services they had to offer to the public. At that time, they worked with our team to say, what do we need to do this? So as an example, whether that meant staggering a shift over at DPW, we worked, the situation obviously was evolving very quickly. So as infection changed, as things went from there, we were very nimble to change those things. And so we do have plans with our teams, and our directors can speak to specifically to how those have evolved. But throughout, they have not been stagnant. It has been the definition of building the plane while they fly it.
So staggered shifts you mentioned at DPW. Did you indeed have staggered shifts for the past 3 months at DPW?
There have been staggered shifts, yes, Councilwoman.
So how many of your employees at DPW have actually been employed and performing the duties? What percentage?
I would have to have that spreadsheet right in front of me. Emmanuel, I don't know if you know off the top of your head what that percentage is for DPW specifically.
Off the top of my head, I do not, but we can get that information to you.
That's a question we've asked now a number of times, the percentage of staff that's been working for the past 3 months. No one seems to know it, but everybody has plans and everybody's looking at work plans and everybody's developing policy. It's a simple question. For the past 3 months, what has the workforce been? What percentage of our workforce has been actually working? No one knows that tonight.
I believe the Director of Human Resources did provide some payroll records, and forgive me, Emmanuel, I cannot recall if they were provided to the treasurer or another member of the team.
Mr. Treasurer, do you have the information? Have they provided the information that we've been asking them for relative to what percentage of the workforce has been working overtime?
So I'm going to say maybe a month ago was the last time you sent it to me. And at that time, the auditor has the numbers. I don't know if she has them off the top of her head, but we did let you know that, I mean, it was a dismal number, 20%, something in that range. Now, it's changed since then. We have not been updated, but you know, the analysis should be pretty simple to do if they want to send it to me. Every time they say, oh, you know, no, it's 80%. And then we go, well, our numbers are 50% or whatever the numbers may be. They said, well, you don't have the updated numbers, but we never have the updated numbers because they're always historical. So I don't know who's working, how many hours at what division presently. The last time I received a list and then you had to compile the information and all the employees weren't on there. I'm going to say it was a month ago, Emmanuel. I can look it up.
Yeah, I think the last one that was requested was right around the 26th of April, if my memory serves me right. I'm happy to send forward the payroll records for the last 2 pay periods as well, so that you can look at those enterprise-wide. I think the last one that I sent you included all departments.
There's still some, I think the temps aren't on there, and there's others that are not on there but again, I'll review it again and make sure.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Treasurer. Thank you, Ms. Solaris. I also would like to continue on. You also testified that today you're working on developing policy, once again, to keep your staff safe relative to wearing masks and putting up plexiglass screens, relative to defining your new protocol. Why are you just starting that now? We've known for 3 months or more that we needed to practice social distancing. So what is the progress? When did you guys start putting up plexiglass partitions, and how have you been able to get masks out to the workforce?
Sure, I'll take those questions in a few different parts.
Enough PPE.
Okay, so let's start with the plexiglass barriers. We have members of our team over at DPW that are fantastic craftsmen that have found a way to make these. And so they beta tested building some over at DPW a few weeks ago. So knowing, as you stated, that we would need something like this, we did find a way to craft those with our own team using their talents to do so. And so those plans have been in place, and now we have ordered more materials. Actually, I believe many of the materials are in, and I know that they've been working to build more of them so we can get more of them installed. So that's the first part on that. We did not just begin building the policies.
Mask wearing. You need to slow down first of all. You're talking very fast, and I'm having a difficult time keeping up with you. So,
Happy to slow down. Sure.
Let's just slow down a little bit, okay?
Sure.
Let's talk about the plexiglass. So the federal government is going to reimburse us for COVID-19 expenditures. And I would imagine that the plexiglass is clearly an appropriate retrofit or expense for that should be reimbursed. So why are we using our precious staff to create, lovely barriers, nice barriers, buying materials? Why didn't we just engage a construction crew? And the reason I ask that question is because we have been repeatedly told, council has been repeatedly told, that DPW is on a skeleton crew and they can't get out and empty trash barrels. They can't get out and install speed bumps that are critical to the safety of our neighborhoods because everybody has stopped work so that in the past 2 weeks, so that barriers can be installed. So why didn't we just contract that work out? Because that seems to me like an easy thing we could have done months ago.
Okay, so we made the choice in order to use our own craftsmen to do this for a few reasons. One, the work that the craftsmen are doing, their actual salaries can then be reimbursed during the time that they are providing doing this work. So one of the things that we ask directors to do is to submit that information to us for processing so that we can include that in our reimbursement submissions to FEMA and REMA. The materials themselves, of course, are also reimbursable. You are correct, Councilwoman. We opted to go for something that was more of a frugal option because although these items are reimbursable via FEMA and REMA and all the Stafford Act in general, the timeline by which that money will come back to the city is unknown. For previous situations, I know that it has been upwards of 3-4 years at times for the city to get reimbursement for incidents and natural disasters that have happened. We have not been given a determinate timeline on how long those reimbursements would take. And so given the opportunity to take more of a frugal option that would provide the same level of quality utilizing our own craftsmen, I did opt to go that route instead.
While I applaud your effort for efficiency, I question your rationale because clearly a priority was not to maintain the services to the city. That's troubling to me. I think that we could have made a more efficient decision in that regard. So please continue. So you talked about the barriers. Let's talk about masks. Why is it taking so long on the masks?
So the policy on masks was actually written initially, I want to say it was about 6 weeks ago, knowing that the workforce was not entirely back. We initially posted it for our directors for their information, and it was added to a policy book that HR, I believe, either has or will be sending out today to all staff as well. So they have that in a concise place. That policy does outline the sorts of masks that are appropriate for all various different members of staff to wear. That may mean, as an example, a custodial staff member, it may be more appropriate for them to wear a paper surgical mask along with a face shield versus somebody who is at a teller desk at the collector's office to wear a fabric mask. We've acquired both those disposable as well as those fabric masks. We have them in stock. Directors were sent out a survey several weeks ago to ask how much PPE they would need on the onset and on an ongoing basis so that we can chart and project the amount of PPE that we need for our staff to keep them safe. That information
Why
is
wasn't that done 3 months ago with you and you developed plans to figure out how you were going to run your operation? Why did it take so long? I just don't understand. You know, we keep hearing plans and policies and protocols and procedures, but, you know, nothing is available. You know, we've asked for the plan, we can't see it. But the plans exist, you said. So I would like to ask, once again, you asked for plans for each department 3 months ago. I would like you to make available the plans that you relied upon to keep your business operations functioning, to do the business of the city of Providence, utilizing the staff that you had, and the challenges, obviously, that you needed to work within. Please provide those plans to the auditor. And also, I'd like to see policy. You say today you're working on policy. We'd like to see policy. You're indicating that you want to open. We heard that it was the first week of June that City Hall would be opening. Now we're hearing it's June 22nd. And council people are hearing that you're not fully staffed. You're still operating on a skeleton crew. And no one is available to do the work when we're asked. They're asked to do it in the city to keep our residents safe and functioning. So, you know, I'm very concerned. I get the fact that you're focused on safety. We all are. There's not a person on this conversation that isn't concerned about the safety of our workers, but the discussion is beyond, and the duty that you have is beyond keeping your staff safe. It's about operating the services of the city of Providence efficiently, given the challenges that we all have before us. I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I'm thinking Mr. Almonte. Mr. Almonte, do you know how to raise your hand on the Zoom? Okay, no, that's fine. But I mean, there's actually an icon you can press. But you had a question, then President Pro Tem Correa, then back to Councilman Taylor. Mr. Almonte.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. I have a couple of questions, and I apologize. I don't know the official title, but it's Madam Chief Operating Officer or the CFO. So either one of you could answer these questions. But as you describe the process that you're taking place, right? Excuse me?
Yes, that is correct, Chief Operating Officer.
Yes.
Yes.
COO. So my first question, and some of this you answered when the majority leader asked the question. It wasn't my direct question, but you answered some of it. But have you estimated the additional expenses to retrofit the office and all the additional expenses that will take place? And will that create a deficit, or will it be within budget of the budget that originally was passed?
When you say within the budget, you mean the original budget that was formulated for the current fiscal year that we are in?
Yes.
My understanding is that the public property budget has indeed been tapped quite a bit throughout this entire incident, as that team is also responsible for all of our cleaning supplies throughout the entire city. So I do not have the figure directly in front of me, but I do know that it is at least close, if not about to exceed, and certainly with the remainder of our fiscal year, I do expect that budget to be fully used, if not exceeded. Larry, I don't know if you had any additional comment on that and the status of public properties budget.
I do. So thank you, Sabrina. So Ernie, the point is, have you estimated? The Chief Operating Officer and the teams under her immediate direction have been steadfastly tracking all COVID-19 related expenses so that when the optimum submission date occurs, while we're during this pandemic declaration period, and that's the key to reimbursement. And if I may, Mr. Chairman, if you would allow me the opportunity to just reflect on the process. During a weather-related...
As long as you're doing a succinct statement.
I am, but I just want to be clear to the committee's benefit. During a typical federal declaration disaster that is weather-related, the duration of the declaration period is generally the day of the disaster and 48 hours hence. In that time frame, and you may know this, Ernie, during that time frame, government rallies to determine the highest point of expense during that 48-hour period. And they have to be particular about pivoting. When do we begin counting? Is it at 8 o'clock in the night when we began moving snow? Or is it 7 o'clock in the morning when we are clearing roads? Because the heavy cost is the cost you want to submit in the 48-hour cycle. What's additionally unusual about this particular event is that the pandemic declaration, because of the public health crisis, followed by the economic crisis, is expanding well into 6 months. I think Ms. Solaris and I talked today that we may not see reimbursement activity as late as the first quarter, sometime in September. Nonetheless, expenses are being tracked, and nor have they yet to be reimbursed. When they are submitted for reimbursement and they are proved to be eligible, there will be only a 75% reimbursement, as are the federal rules. So by its nature, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Almonte, there will automatically be a 25% deficit loss on any expenditure. To the credit of city departments where we already had supplies in stock or we could afford to order in the current budget. And Mr. Chairman, I believe on tomorrow evening, the Department of Public Property will appear before this committee for their budget hearing, and they will talk in greater detail of the impact thus far that they have incurred with COVID-related expenses, predominantly sanitation supplies, predominantly at this point keeping buildings safe on a current basis. And if you will, we can have that discussion in greater detail tomorrow evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mancini. Before Mr. Almonte continues, Mr. Richards, I believe, is on the line and Commissioner Parry. Weren't they the ones to be identified as the ones to be putting together all the COVID-19 related expenses?
They would be as it pertains to public safety, given the awesome task of public safety alone. But I'll let the Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner speak for that.
Commissioner, Deputy Commissioner, have you, you're maintaining for public safety the COVID-19 related expenses, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Just public safety.
Do you have the updated expense list at this point in time?
The deputy commissioner probably does and may recite that off her head. I don't know what that expense is.
Deputy, do you have that?
Yes, I do. I do have those expenses. They were updated as of last week, about just almost about $500,000, and I can have them updated to you by tomorrow by close of business.
Please do forward it to the internal auditor and the treasurer, Mr. Almonte. Ms. Solaris, COO, do you have the updated COVID-19 expenses so far?
So we are working with a consultant at the time to help us with all of these. We just put the ask out for our directors to resubmit some additional information. We expect our next official set of information to go into REMA for processing later this month. And so I will have a much more concrete figure for you.
Who's the consultant? Who's the consultant?
His name is Jeff Stevens. Actually, the treasurer asked to be connected with him just a few days ago, and I provided him with his contact information.
Do we have what so far on the other side of the city so far? How much we're talking about? And how much so far? What number do we have?
I would have to pull that up. Sorry, I can double back with you or the auditor with that information.
I'd like to know that. And the second thing is, are you also doing COVID-19 related expenses for the school side too, or someone else doing that?
The school department has opted to do that entirely separate from us.
And they will then go through their own processes to go get reimbursement. They will not be looking for the city side to go and do that processing. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, all right. So internal auditor, are you there, or treasurer? Do you have the latest number on the city side for how much has been on COVID-19 expenses?
Mr. Chairman, I did receive something from the deputy commissioner, but I have not received anything from the COO.
Okay. So if you could provide that by tomorrow, COO, the internal auditor, and to get the updated at this time. And Mr. Almonte, you continue. You have the mic, sir.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, my last two questions were answered either by the respondents or the additional questions that you asked. One was about, are they tracking them? And I heard they were. And the second one was, what about the schools? And I think we just heard the answer to that one as well. So I'm all done with my questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And if you're looking to ask any more as we continue on, there is an icon. If you look to the bottom there's like 3 dots to the right. You click on it and it'll show like raise hand. Oh, okay, sorry. Do you see that? I don't know if it helps you. If you want to raise your hand. And then President Pro Tem Correa has the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to echo the majority leader's comments that, we have a lot of things that are not getting done in our neighborhoods throughout the city due to the lack of workforce being into work. And we need to ramp this up a little bit. I've been in City Hall the last couple of weeks. I've spoken with public property regarding all over the city. They tell me that they're going to be going out and getting it ready, getting it done. Here we are going on week 3, and the graffiti still has not been addressed. Just last week, I was in City Hall and I spoke with the carpenter that is installing these cough sneeze guards. He's the carpenter from DPW. And I find it kind of alarming that we only have one individual that is installing these. And when I ran into him last week inside the neighborhood services office, installing them in there, he was like, Councilman, there's only me that is doing this, and I'm doing every building in the city. And he said, believe it or not, they just dumped this on me. And he had a list. He said, they just dumped another 40 more on me. Can you get me some help? He's all alone. And he's the carpenter from DPW. And he's saying, listen, there's people down just not in DPW, but in the Parks Department and everything else that are staying home. And I'm here busting my ass building these things, and they throw another 40 on me. And he says he's going out on vacation for 2 weeks, the end of the month. So I think we're going to run into a problem. So, we need to get people back to work. We need to get this carpenter some help installing these. And, I just find it, we're going to discuss this furloughs and days off and stuff. That's stuff that should have been done back in March and April. Not now when we're getting ready to open up city government, and now we're going to start furloughing people when we need them. The Parks Department, I ran into them. I was like, when are they going to cut the grass over here? They were like, we're trying to get people to come in. We can't even get people to come in. Nobody wants to come into work. They're all saying, why should I come in when X, Y, and Z are sitting home too? So, and this was brought up, I believe, at the last finance meeting to Emmanuel, that department directors were having a hard time getting their employees to come in. And he was like, yes, we're aware of it. We're working on it. Well, it's still going on. So we have a serious problem here. And that, I want to echo what the majority leader said. There's a lot of things that are not getting done. Our neighborhoods are starting to look terrible. And we need to get workers into work, not furloughing them off and giving them time off. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Kuti, would you like to respond to that fact statement that President Motama stated, that you stated that there seems to be a group of craftsmen producing these things, and then during this fact conversation, there's actually only one person doing it? Can you please explain the inconsistency of your statement and what the fact that President Motama stated for the record?
I do not believe that there is just one, and if that was a statement made by the craftsman, then I'm concerned about that. I intend to follow up with CPW on that information, Chairman.
I'd love to sit in on those conversations as well, with our chief of staff.
Thank you. If you can have that arranged, I'd ask the chief of staff to arrange that with the chief of operations and President Motama.
Mr. Chair.
Chief of staff, and then we have the vice chair.
I need to follow up. Thank you,
Yep.
Councilor Pro Tem, for articulating that so clearly, which you've made my point, which is we don't have enough staff addressing these barriers that are critical for the safety. We're saying that safety, you're saying that safety is your top priority, but we're obviously we don't have enough staff to get the barriers up in an efficient time frame. That's a big issue. And that brings me right back. The Council Pro Tem made my point. I don't understand why, for efficiency's sake, we didn't just go out and hire contractors and get the job done freeing up our staff. Our contractors are charged with other duties. So it's basically a plan that we're looking for. We're looking for a plan to how do we utilize our staff? How do we keep them safe? Yes. But how do we best utilize our existing staff to do the work of the city? There's essential jobs that need to get done that are not getting done. And no one seems to be concerned about it. And we have meeting after meeting after meeting asking what is being done, what is your plan? Nobody knows the percentage of staff workforce that is even engaged. No one will give us that answer as a matter of testimony. There's people listening tonight and want to know what the plans are. And they're not getting those answers, nor are the council people getting them as well. So thanks, Council Pro Tem, for articulating that point. It's valid and it's a serious concern. I'm done, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Councilman Taylor?
Yes. Let me see. I got a few things I want to go over here. Okay, so.
Councilman Taylor, we haven't got into the furlough conversation yet, so.
Yeah, I'm not going to go there yet.
Thank you.
So I got other things to ask. So I'm going to follow up with what the pro tem said, that there's only one carpenter from DPW. The fire department has a carpenter. Are they going to be doing the public safety buildings? Have we reached out to that carpenter?
Madam Chief Operating Officer, do you have, or Commissioner Perry, do you have an answer to that question?
I personally do not know if that particular carpenter has been equipped for that.
Well, he's a carpenter, so I mean, it's
well, he's certainly capable if he's a carpenter. I just mean to say that I don't know if that particular carpenter has been tasked with this job.
Okay, and then first, when you mentioned, you said the team. Who is the team? What's that team? Who is the team you're talking about? What is that?
Can you give me some context?
You said, well, the team is working on getting the what you call it, the city hall ready and running and yada yada. So who is the team?
It's a combination of DPW with the carpenters and those sorts of skillmen that we have, of public property, of course, because they are responsible for our facilities, and our operations team that are directly under my purview.
Okay. That's the people that you said, the departments that are under you. That's the team then? Basically. Okay. All right. Here's the problem that I have, that every department that's come ahead of us in the finance committee that we've asked, and they've said, and I'm just quoting numbers, 70 to 75% of the people have been working from home. So I don't understand in the
Chief, Councilman Taylor.
Yeah.
I'd like to correct you. They 75% haven't said they've been working from home. 75% been saying they've been sitting home, not working.
Right.
It's a fundamental difference.
Okay.
Sitting
so
home.
75.
In fact, hang on a second. Actually, the HR director stated the majority of his staff was actually home, getting paid, not working. In fact, didn't even have even IT connections on the record, he stated. So under your own purview, majority of HR staff is sitting home, getting paid, and not doing anything. So that's a fact that's on actually the record. Councilman Taylor, you have the mic, sir.
Okay, so 75% were sitting home getting paid. So if it's a baseball game, we're in like the 8th inning. Why for the first 7 innings were they sitting home when we could have been utilizing them to prepare getting City Hall, getting these department buildings ready? And I say this because one of the big arguments that we had a few months ago was the planning development did the Slower Streets program. That cost $15,000 for signage and sawhorses, plus overtime for spending for the Parks Department of DPW to put out there. Why didn't we utilize this money and manpower for getting City Hall and the departments ready?
You're asking why we did not reallocate staff that was used for Slow Streets to getting City Hall ready.
I'm asking why the money and the manpower, instead of wasting time on the slow streets, which we know was a failure. I do, because in my ward, it's a failure. So we spent money. We don't know exactly what the overtime is on it. And as a matter of fact, that's still out there. the soul horses and the signs. So why didn't we use the manpower? Because that was something we did right away. We got to do it. We sent the people out and did it. So why didn't we have these departments ready? Because when we voted the last time, which it actually failed, the executive order said that it was good until June 5th. So we were under the impression that June 5th, City Hall, or June 8th, because it's Monday, City Hall and departments were going to be open.
So I cannot speak to a prior statement that was made about June 5th, but I will say that on the slow seats program, it was a priority to us all in order to get that there. And that we know that a lot of our constituents do not have backyards. They do not have public space to exercise, to move about. And it was seen as a way that we've seen other cities and towns around the country creatively find space for people in order to get that much needed exercise. And so I respect your opinion and that you feel that it was not a success in your particular ward. The last report I'd received from the planning department is that there are some areas in which this is being used and appreciated.
But I guess my question is, why were those people, 75% of the people, sitting home and not working to get City Hall ready? Let me give an example. Water supply went back to work full time last week. When they go in, they get their temperature taken. And if they have a temperature, they're sent home and they got to quarantine for 4 days. Correct?
That is correct.
So why aren't the other departments that are working, DPW, Parks Department, why aren't they prepared? Why aren't they getting their temperatures taken as the same as water supply? How did water supply, with probably the same amount of members, if not more, than DPW and Parks, how are they doing it? And the DPW and Parks, basically, what are we telling our employees? So someone works at water supply, they're getting a test. If they get sick, they got to go home. They got to be quarantined. DPW and Parks, we're not giving that same message. We're like, okay, you go to work. We don't care about you. We don't have the masks. We don't have the face shields. We're not going to take your temperature. So I don't get what we're doing here.
So as far as masks and PPE go, all directors were given instruction when this whole thing started to immediately reach out to public property. Several communications were sent out to say that if you do have staff that are reporting to complete some of the duties that you have, you need to let us know and we will disseminate that. So that's the major disseminator of all the PPE. So that is available for staff. I do want to clarify, and that while we did send out a survey with regards to outfitting staff with more PPE leading up to the 22nd opening, PPE has been available for staff.
What about the temperature taken? How come water supply is doing it? The other departments aren't.
On water supply, they did bring some people back into the office in order to, a good example of that is their customer service center. They opted to do that, and Ricky Carullo did work with me on that plan and did work with me to communicate with that and make sure that we were okay with it. Their facilities already were a natural fit for having some of those things happen. So if you're familiar with the customer service center there that constituents can come into to pay their bills, there was already a permanent glass barrier.
I'm talking about
So, as
the
an
workers.
example.
I'm talking about the workers who went back to work full time. They pull up in their car. They have someone in this little booth out there. They come out and take the temperature of the person and write it down, the date, the name, and the person. And then the next day they do the same thing. They've been doing it. How come DPW, Parks don't have that same policy to get their temperature taken?
We do have that policy now. As far as temperature taking before, we've been asking employees to self-screen before coming. So they're not to come to work without, with a fever or with any of the assigned symptoms that have been highlighted by us by CDC.
Okay, so you have the policy now. How did water supply get it? Where does water supply? Who's in charge of water supply? Water supply.
Ricky Carullo reports into me.
Okay, so that falls under you. So what, didn't you think that, oh, I better do this for the other departments?
I respect your perspective on that. I do. It's a different operation with a completely different set of responsibilities. So we did treat them differently. Yes.
Well, we have one guy, he goes to work. He's a T&D or whatever he is. And he works, he drives in a truck just like DPW or just like public Parks Department. So I don't understand the difference, why one department is getting their temperatures taken and the rest of them aren't. And you haven't given me an answer yet, so I don't know.
Do you have an answer, Madam Koo?
I had stated earlier that we asked our employees to self-screen prior to coming into their shifts. I accept your feedback on Providence Water versus DPW and the others, but I'm sharing that we asked them to self-screen before coming into work up until now for the remainder of our teams.
But do you get I want to think, do you get the impression of what these workers, because they know each other, they live in the city. So a water supply person goes in, gets their temperature taken. In the meantime, they go to a job and they're out there and they're digging it up and they run into the sewer department or they run into public works and they talk amongst each other. And they say, oh yeah, when we came to work, we had our temperature taken. And the sewer department says, really? Because we didn't do that. And then the public works would say, well, we didn't do that either. So what message are we sending our employees that water supply, you're important, but the other departments you're not? That's the real issue that I have. And I'm not going to get an answer. So I'll move on to something else. All right. So I don't want to go into the furloughs. Yeah. Well, you mentioned that City Hall, and I guess that's going to get into furloughs, but City Hall opening. What are going to be the opening of City Hall on the 22nd? What do we expect for that week?
What do you expect for that week in terms of the experience?
No. What do we expect for the opening? Are we open? We're not going to be open from the 26th to the 22nd to the 26th. What are the days that we're opening for City Hall?
Days of the week is
Yes.
your question.
Mm-hmm.
So we have established 2 group shifts, and I should caveat that Emmanuel did work with 1033 and coming to an agreement on what shifts would look like, so that we could accommodate staggering of staff coming in. And part of that agreement, for example, was that summer hours of summer would not be happening. So these shifts are things that have been agreed to with 1033 and will be observed by all staff, non-union and union. So there are 2 groups. If you're coming to work in person, preferably you are in either group A, which is a Monday, Tuesday group, or you are in group B on a Thursday, Friday group, to allow for public property to conduct deep cleaning on Wednesdays, as well as over the weekends between groups. We're trying to mitigate cross-pollination between those 2 groups in the event that somebody gets sick. There are staggered shifts for office personnel, starting there is one at 8, 8:30, and 9 a.m. And so directors in working with us and putting together their shift schedules are assigning them to those groups so that we don't have one large group coming all at once to any of our city buildings or departing all at once.
So if I'm working in the department, whatever, in City Hall, and I'm on A group, I'd work Monday, Tuesday, and I'd have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday off, correct?
Not necessarily. You may have, this also depends on, and I know you'll get into work share in a little while, but this also depends on whether you are work shared or what your position is here. But if you are group A, you are in person Monday, Tuesday. Let's say you are work shared one day, Wednesdays with the building being closed, it's a natural fit for you having that day off, and you may telecommute on Thursday and Friday. And so it would be a combination of in-person reporting and telecommuting to accommodate.
So if I could work Monday, Tuesday at City Hall, everybody's off Wednesday because they're cleaning it. And then Thursday and Friday, I could work from home.
And to clarify, if there is somebody who is not on work share and is at 100%, then they would be telecommuting on Wednesdays.
And how did you, let's say I'm going to get into that, Chairman. So should I wait?
Yeah, well, I think Councilman Anthony has a question.
Okay.
I want to get a question and then Vice Chair, so that's okay. And then we can, I think we can get into that new work share furlough thing, I think. 'Cause I think it's going to be even another like onion to peel.
Right, that's where I'm headed, but I don't want to get too far.
If you could, Councilman, if you could hang on, I'd like to give Councilwoman Anthony an opportunity. If it's about work share, Councilman Anthony, I presume it's not about those 2 issues at this time, right?
No, actually, Mr. Chair, I apologize. I should have told you this in the beginning of the meeting, but I have to attend another meeting at 7, so I'm afraid I'm going to have to leave. So I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Councilman Anthony, I would ask that if you have questions, if you want to get them to the internal auditor, we'll make sure we'll get them forwarded and try to get them answered for you, okay?
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. All right, Vice Chair?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to follow up on my colleague's line of questioning. The COO has testified that she has reviewed her plans to return to work, staggered work plans with the unions. I am still interested in seeing a written plan that we all can appreciate and digest, a comprehensive plan that should have started 3 months ago till now as to how we're operating and how we're getting operational, how we're protecting our staff, how we're getting the work of the city done. And the plan should treat everyone fairly, and it should be visible and transparent so that every department knows, getting to what Councilman Taylor said. We keep hearing of staff members saying, my department's not treated the same as the other department. That's not fair, that's not right. So, we recognize the challenges of different departments. We recognize they may have different social distancing, different equipment needs. We recognize that. But absent a plan, we have no confidence that you have a plan that's fair, comprehensive, treats everyone fairly, and quite frankly, is efficient. We heard tonight on Council Pro Tem spoke aptly about his concern about one contractor. That's just one instance. I'm sure there's other. If we have an opportunity to see a plan, it can be vetted. And we can make an evaluation whether it makes the most sense from a financial perspective, because obviously these decisions that you're making off page or without being documented and having that plan transparent for workers, for taxpayers, for council members, we don't get to vet it. And that's disappointing. And I think we can do a better job of that. And we all gave the administration the benefit of the doubt, particularly when this first hit. But we've been waiting. We've been waiting a long time. We've been asking you over and over again. And it's time we need to see your comprehensive plan. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chief Operating Officer, do you know when you'll have your comprehensive plan available?
You are asking either for current operations now, or are you asking for plans for the 22nd, Chairman?
It sounds like they're looking, I presume, for the upcoming 22nd right now. If we can get that, it'd be very helpful.
What I can provide to you by tomorrow is the guidance that we provided to directors. What we did ask for them to do is to work over the coming week to refine those plans further, understanding what we needed to put in place ahead of the 22nd.
Okay, thank you. All right. So before we get into the furlough and the work program, I have a couple of follow-up questions. I just want to get a sense of. So I just want to very quickly, a couple of, actually, you asked about I was wondering, you mentioned, what were the departments, Madam Chief Operating Officer, that you say you manage directly, you said? Which are the ones?
Off the top of my head, public property, DPW, parks, recreation, purchasing, sustainability. I can keep going off the top of my head. I'd have to pull up the list because I have so many of them. But Providence Water, for instance, reports into me.
Well, okay, now there's a couple of departments. I want to ask you a couple of questions. She's the water supply. The water supply board reports to you.
Ricky Carullo does connect with me about operating procedures. Yes, it being a quasi-governmental agency, of course, as you know, it's a unique circumstance.
Right. So let me ask this question on that one. Let's start with them first. So, did the water supply board? Did you give them how to operate, to open, close, all that stuff for the past 3 months? Was it your organization, you and your team?
Ricky developed his own plan, and I know that he's been in touch with his board about those items as well. And he did confer with me to ask, whether or not those plans were consistent with the safety protocols that we were looking at here before presenting them to the board.
So if Mr. Carullo had a particular plan that he wanted to instill in the board, and the water supply board also wanted to, and you did not on the city side, do you have any authority to stop him from doing that?
No.
I wouldn't say that it's necessarily authority so much as it is a partnership, and that we also completely respect the board's place here in the purview of Providence Water.
But the answer would be no, right? Because the water supply board is the actual bosses for the director, right? And the
Of course,
director,
yes.
director doesn't take orders from City Hall. The director has been hired to run the water supply board. So you would not have any, the city would not have, you would have to have the board get mobilized, and then the board would have to vote to supersede his decision. You don't have the authority.
Right.
You in that, right? Okay. So now let's talk about the Parks Department. The Parks Department, you mentioned, says, so tell me what your relationship is with the Parks Department. What amount of authority do you have been exerting over the Parks Department? Tell me what you've been doing with them.
Wendy Nilsson reports to me with regards to operational matters. Yes, much as in anything else, we talk about HR matters, staffing issues, any challenges that are happening, new programs coming out, general oversight. Chairman.
So let me ask this question. Can you tell me where you have that authority? Where do you have that authority to even have that oversight from the Parks Department?
Are you asking what my authority is per charter or some other mannerism?
I'm asking you where you feel that the chief operating officer has the authority and oversight of the Parks Department. Where do you derive that authority from specifically? Since you're wielding that power, you should know where it comes from, right? I know where my authority comes from. Where does your authority come from? In your position as chief operating officer, where does your authority come from that you have the authority for oversight over the Parks Department?
I would say in that the administrative branch oversees the functions of city government. We have divvied up the departments among the various chiefs, chief of staff, chief of policy, and myself, and those departments report into us, sir.
All right, so I would ask you, and I know the charter, unfortunately during these trying times, has been something that's been abused these past few months in particular, but I think it's very important that actually if the Board of Parks Commissioner has, and I'll quote from the charter just so everybody knows. If the Board of Parks Commissioners shall, it's not discretionary, shall have jurisdiction over all green spaces of the city, all parks, including Roger Williams Museum, the North Burial Ground, and any other city-owned or controlled cemeteries, public recreation centers, and all types of those including adjacent to the school property, and all forestry functions, et cetera, et cetera. So it's the Board of Parks Commission. And the Board of Parks Commission actually hires a superintendent of parks. And that superintendent of parks does not report to you, nor does get any oversight, nor they can talk to you. But the superintendent of parks is actually hired for a 5-year term by the Parks Commission. How do I know? I'm a Board of Parks Commissioner, folks. Okay? And there's a reason why this charter was written this way. And I've been lucky to know some of the members that actually wrote this back in the 80s. Some have passed away and some are still alive, who actually wrote it. There's a reason why it exists. And it says, by the way, the superintendent of parks will be hired by the Parks Commission. And they shall have all the authority to run the department, right? And for administrative and supervisory details of all matters within that jurisdiction. So you do not have any authority over the superintendent of parks or the Parks Commission. You can talk and you can give suggestions. You know how you're asking us for suggestions? I'm letting you know you have no authority, and you are violating the city charter and the law. And I know the city solicitor right now lately has been having a problem with enforcing the city charter. But I'm going to let you know the city council, at least this committee, will do it. And with the fact that the budget is before us, and all of you are looking for money from this council, so we pay you and what you do, you also need to know what you do. So my concern is that if you've been overreaching your authority into the parks, the superintendent of parks should be putting together, as well as Mr. Cruz should be putting together their action plan. They can talk to you, get guidance, and get some information. But you don't have any oversight over either water supply or the Board of Parks Commission. Actually, members such as myself, I do. If this superintendent would like to do so, it goes through that process. In fact, the Parks Commission re-upped their contract. You don't have any authority over her. Okay? So I'm concerned about that because I believe there's been a lot of overreaching with you and your division into the parks and not allowing that division to run. Now, I know it's for the past few months. That's been one of the few departments that's actually been running pretty well in a lot of ways. The unilateral decision about what you're doing about one person per truck, all these things, which, by the way, for the past 3 months, I've been talking to administration, you haven't been on those phones, which is totally contrary to what's going on, by the way, in a big agency called the Department of Transportation, which has successfully navigated through this issue by utilizing appropriate safety protocols for the past 3 months, in which we still have all our projects on time and on budget, and construction is still rolling. What gives me deep concern is that lack of experience or willing to listen to others has created a massive void where now you have a problem now today with your potential plan, which is to have employees who don't want to come to work, or you got directors who can't get employees to come to work. You have done, what you've done is a disservice. I understand safety protocol, I get all that, and I know you're going to throw COVID-19, that's the watchword, but that doesn't mean should replace, panic and fear should not replace leadership and the voice of reason. And my concern is that, when I know you're going to be getting into this whole 3-2 or whatever this work share thing is, which is going to further debilitate whatever services the city can provide anyway. So what may be motivating you is money, but then again, the budget the administration submitted to this council clearly shows no motivation about any problem with finance, by the way, all due respect. In fact, it's a budget, the same old budget I would see every year in normal circumstances. A budget with more jobs, more pay raises, more money for services and programming. There's no frugal measures whatsoever. I thought it was ironic when you stated the word frugal, because the proposed budget before us is none. So I want to understand that how much power do you believe you have at the Parks Department, first of all? And do you believe, knowing what the law says, do you still believe you have that overarching and oversight authority over the superintendent and the Board of Parks Commission?
I am certainly not going to quote charter in this moment. I would defer to the city solicitor on that information, Chairman.
So, City Solicitor, are you on the phone, sir?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
All right. So it's Charter Section 1003. Just to understand, charter is another word for the Constitution, just so everybody understands. All the uneducated ones or uninitiated, charter is the Constitution of the city. No different than the United States Constitution. We all have to follow that. We have to follow this. Listen, can you please explain to me where in the charter or where in city law does it has direct oversight over the superintendent of parks and the Board of Parks Commissioner, please? Can you tell me where that states that? Because I may be wrong.
I'm not aware of it, and I think Ms. Hilario-Sanders is talking more operationally as opposed to her direct authority over either the Board of Park Commissioners or the superintendent. I think maybe working collectively to promulgate various things, but as we know, the Board of Park Commissioners, they have the ultimate say on projects and whatnot that is done by the Parks Department.
And also, Mr. Solicitor, also how the department runs. So any particular plan that you are opposing, Chief Operating Officer, would have to be properly vetted by the way, by the Water Supply Board as well as the Board of Parks Commission, in which whatever you think is your suggested idea on how the Parks Department should be run needs to be actually go the opposite way. You need to submit what you think to the superintendent, and the superintendent works with the Board of Parks Commission and talks about what's the appropriate plan so they can run that department, because they've been running it in a better way. They've been running it better than, for example, the DPW, in which everybody went home for the past week. Steph, by the way, received overtime to put up those sawhorses to block off streets. That was beautiful. You had DPW workers who sat home for 5 days straight, getting paid doing nothing, but then you call them in on the weekend to give them overtime. For someone who's concerned about the budget, everything is counterintuitive. That's one of my biggest concerns. And I think it's important that issue needs to be addressed immediately. The directors, those superintendents or those appointed officials have the autonomy to put together what their action plan is. You can give a suggestion, but they should have it. And also, by the way, the mayor's executive order expired when the council rejected it. So the city's supposed to be opening up this week. So you guys had more than enough information and notice to do that. That also gives us great force. And we're not saying open up in a reckless manner. We're not saying open to put people's lives in jeopardy. But all due respect, if McDonald's can open up to keep on selling hamburgers and coffee and keep it a safe environment for their workers there, I cannot imagine why the city of Providence can't do the same. If the local bakery down the street from here can still operate during this whole process in a safe and efficient manner, I find it hard to believe the city of Providence, in all its technology and all its brain trust, cannot figure out how to do it themselves. If other businesses, local business stores, and even CVS and et cetera can operate, so can we. I find it hard to believe that you're actually having this hard of a time, this inability to figure this out. And by the way, to the own admissions I mentioned earlier, is that department after department has come before this committee the past few weeks, and all they keep on saying, everybody's sitting home, getting paid, and doing nothing. And as for call forwarding, I think that is insulting, because every department said, we're not doing call forwarding. In fact, I think there was only one department. We asked the IT, Madam Chief Operating Officer. They said, yeah, there's the ability. You didn't have call forwarding for the treasurer's, the collector's office. Oh, by the way, you should have call forwarding for all the admin in the building, sitting home, at least taking constituents' concerns. IT says they have more than enough computers, but they haven't been dispersed. What's waiting so long? That's the particulars of the plan that you need to present to this body. How many computers? What are you doing? Well, how many people are going to be call forwarding? How many people? Right now, you could probably have oodles of people with call forwarding, at least get administrative services. People should be able to call City Hall and say, and get a live person. Since we're all sitting home getting paid doing nothing, put call forwarding there. So you'd have thousands of people instructing the people in Providence what's going on. That costs nothing. We had the IT person. We also had public safety. Public safety is doing it, as well as the emergency management. No big. So the problem is that the presentation you're giving us tonight doesn't, the truth and veracity isn't there, because the testimony on the record for the past few weeks has been completely the opposite. So I don't know if your folks have been monitoring these meetings, or you have been monitoring these meetings, but I find it hard to believe that you're actually saying just the opposite on the record and portraying it that this is fact, when all the testimony on the record, under oath, has been to the contrary. So two things lead me. There's two answers, right? Someone's telling the truth, and someone's kind of fibbing. It's either or. That's how it usually works when people get sworn on oath, and there's contrary testimony. So, what the people of Providence have a right to know is how's government going to function specifically, in detail. Now, I know you just mentioned about City Hall being closed for Wednesday. Why don't you do? Now, I don't understand it. I know the proposed programs are 3-2, 3 on, 2 off. Why would you close City Hall on Wednesday? Why did you have them do the deep cleaning on Saturday or Sunday? Everything you seem to be doing is exactly just how to keep City Hall closed and not accessible. So you should have a play-by-play action plan, stating exactly what you're going to do for each department, each unit, how it's going to function, who's going to be home, who's getting call forwarding, who's getting a computer. And I'll be honest with you, it's dumbfounding the fact that you don't have that already. That doesn't make any sense. You had 3 months. So first of all, the city solicitor has rendered his opinion on the charter. You do not have that authority. I'm letting you know you don't have the authority. And if we have to further in this budget, we're more than happy to do that. You have limited authority with those two divisions. You can talk to them, you can give advice to them, but you do not oversight or final say over them. There's a reason why our founding fathers and mothers created this city charter. Just like I have to follow it, you as an employee for the city of Providence has to follow it too. Okay? So that's on that one. Now, as for the plan, I guess we can now don't give me questions on that because I know we're not getting any response because, by the way, that just gives you further concern and gives no relief to the average constituent that we represent. That City Hall knows what it's doing, nor is it getting its act together to run forward, to move forward. Councilman Taylor, then we'll get into the whole potential work furlough and work share thing. Councilman Taylor?
Thank you, Chairman. COO, I get one quick question. Why did we not start this program March 16th when the COVID hit? We already had 3 months under our belt and we could have actually gone to September 8th. Why didn't we start like when everybody else was laying off people? Why are we at the end furloughing people?
I'm sorry, when you're saying which program, you're saying the work share program?
Yeah, in other words, that everybody started laying off March 16th. April 1st is when the $600 kicked in. And that's going to be the big elephant in the room, the $600 from the federal, because some people are going to get it. Some people aren't going to get it. But if we laid off, or, laid off everybody from April 1st, let's say, April 1st, and kept going through July 31st, why didn't we do it then? Why? In other words, the reason I ask is because one of the big things
hang on. That's a good question. CEO, why did you just not lay off people when everybody else was, so the city could get financial relief at that time, the folks could collect and get their $600 versus have them all sit home, get paid and do nothing? That's the question. So can you please tell us, what was the thinking to further exacerbate the city's finances on one end versus try to seek relief on the other end a couple months ago? Can you please explain that theory and rationale, and who made the decision?
This was a joint decision between the administration, our human resources department, our finance department, looking at various strategies. As I know that there have been several conversations between our chief of staff and members of the council staff as well, especially with regards to finances. I believe that she shared previously that we've been looking at several different strategies. This was the particular strategy that all parties felt was the best fit for the city.
So you have your answer, Councilman, on that one, Councilman Taylor.
When was that?
Chair.
Sorry, Chair.
That's okay. You asked my question. That's all. That was my question, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could continue.
Councilman Taylor.
When was that decision made? Just recently? Because it seems like a lot of decisions were just made within the last week or two.
With regards to work share specifically?
Yes.
I would have to look back at the calendar, but for work share specifically, it was a choice that was made within about the last 2 weeks. Yes, sir.
And how did you come up with who would get the work share? Who would be in the work share program or furlough days? How did you come up with that?
In combination with human resources as well as with directors, we evaluated what times people were working. And so, for instance, the payroll records that HR had shared previously with the treasurer were used to take a look at where staff were particularly not reporting full-time hours at the time, and those particular people became candidates to consider for this.
Okay. Are all the directors, are they on the workforce program or no?
Some are and some are not.
Why?
As an example, arts, culture, and tourism. We are not doing a slew of events right now. And so it makes a great deal of sense for that particular director to participate in workshare, and that she does not necessarily have 35 hours worth a week for the entire week. Contrarily, on the other end, Leo Parada for DPW should be available for response at any time.
Okay, so Now, all the directors that are under Leo Parada, are they coming to work or going to involved in the workshare program?
I don't have the spreadsheet in front of me right now, Councilman, but I believe that the division heads themselves are not participating. Emmanuel, do you have that?
That sounds correct. There was, yeah, I'm almost certain that no division heads are part of the workshare program, but I can double check and provide that answer.
So the superintendent, who falls under DPW, the superintendent, the sewer department, and environmental. Those director heads are not in the workshare program?
Let me verify. I'm not aware of superintendents being on the workshare program. If I may just add some context to Sabrina's response, especially for our 1033.
Excuse me, Mr. Director. Which response to which question?
To the question of how it was made a determination as to who would participate in workshare and who would not.
Okay, so why don't you, before you do that, okay, after you do that, then please explain workshare very quickly. Go ahead, Director, Mr. Director.
Sure, let me explain workshare very quickly. Workshare is a program through the Department of Labor and Training that allows employers to avoid layoffs by having a period of approved time where DLT, the Department of Labor and Training, would pay unemployment benefits on a percentage basis. And the employer, meaning the city, would pay the remaining or active balance. So for example, employees on a 20% work share, the city would pay 80% of their time reimbursement, and then 20% of their time, or how we've worked it in our application, 1 day, they would be temporarily laid off and they would go on unemployment for that 1 day. Some folks, so we have 2 levels currently. We have a 1-day work share program and a 2-day work share program. And we made determinations as to who goes in 1 or 2 days based on, as Sabrina indicated, previous payroll records, function, and classification. I just want to state that any change in the working conditions of a collective bargaining unit has to be agreed to by the unit, by the union leadership, and therefore is subject to that joint agreement. So that joint analysis was made with 1033 to determine what positions would go into either the 20 or the 40% work share classification.
So let me ask you this question. The department heads, the directors. Now I'm going to talk about water supply and parks. Did you give them a mandate and tell them who was going to come in and who was not going to come in their departments? Or did they just let you said, this is what the proposed program is, figure out what units and who you would want to come in and not come in? How did you approach it?
Water Supply Board was not part of the original submission that we sent to DLT last week. Their director, Ricky Carullo, has proposed his work share solution for his staff. As far as the other departments,
did you do the same? Knowing now that you guys don't have the authority in the charter, did you do the same deference to the superintendent of parks and the board of parks commissioner, or did you dictate terms?
So I deferred to the authority of the chief operating officer and the chief of staff as to the departments that oversee.
Chief operating officer, did you determine who was going to come into the parks department? Or did you, superintendent, have the authority, which it does, and the autonomy, which she does, to make that determination? Did you give that, the parks commissioner and the superintendent, in your mind, it sounds like in your mind, you thought you had the authority. So did you dictate the terms to them, or did you give her the autonomy?
She was not given entire autonomy. Conversations were had with the superintendent.
I would suggest now is knowing that you would violate the city charter, just as you gave deference to Mr. Carullo, you now have to give deference to the superintendent of parks. You have to let the superintendent and board of parks commissioners put together their action, and they then submit it. And if you do to the contrary, I know you say, well, there's nothing we can do. Actually, there will be. The budget's before us, and we will take whatever appropriate actions to address the illegal violation of city charter. Okay? Gonna let you know, I'm gonna put you on notice, so when it happens, you all don't go, oh gee, I can't believe that's happening. We want you to know we're serious. So you need to give the appropriate respect and authority to that commission as you do to the Water Supply Commission. They have a quasi-city under the charter. So I would suggest that you forthwith get that adjust, make sure that the Superintendent Board of Parks Commissioner has signed off on what would be the action plan. This way, their operations function correctly. Because this unilateral interpretation, clearly, you don't know what's going on in those units, those departments, no, the rest of them. We don't get into DBW yet. So my question is, when I look at the organization, when I look at the comp classifications on the positions, I need the personnel supplement, I need by tomorrow, you identify every position that you plan on doing this 3-2-4-1. For example, in the personnel supplement, if you have, for example, the zoning board of review, the building, public property, on each of those positions, who do you plan on, who did you dictate that goes in this program, this 3-2-4-1 program? In which, for example, if clerk 3, or whatever, clerk 4, there's one position, is that person doing a 3-2 or 4-1, or are you having that person do cold folding, having that person? So we need each individual, I presume you already have it, because it sounds like you've been working so hard on this, so you're pushing the plan, so you must have that information on each position and how that position is going to operate in city government all the way to at least September. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, the program is until about July, and then any individuals who make $76,000 or less potentially are in better position all the way to the end of September because of the $600 bump. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So I got that interpretation correct, right? So there's a whole host of employees that can do this program potentially 3-2-4-1 all the way to September and get reimbursed by the DLT and the COVID-19 issue. So you must have identified each and every employee and how much they make, because certain employees post-September, if you keep them on that, will no longer be making the same amount of money they make. It turns into a big negative for them, right? You've done that analysis, I presume?
Yes.
Right, so you've done that analysis. I figured that. Because you have to do all that specifics for DLT. Please provide all that specific information to the internal auditor. You have to have it because you told me you submitted the DLT, so you have to have all that information. Please go to the internal auditor by tomorrow morning, please, and Mr. Monty will review it. I also want to know which individual, which position. And then also, I believe you need to modify your Parks Department side by giving the appropriate respect and law to the Superintendent of Parks, the autonomy that they have under the law. Just so you know, you don't have the authority to fire them. Did you know that? You have no authority to fire the Superintendent of Parks. No authority to deny any benefits to the Superintendent. Zero. The Board of Parks Commissioner does, just like the Water Supply Board. Those are funny positions, right? Versus you, Director of HR, you can be fired by the Chief Operating Officer, right? Because you don't have special protection under the city charter. I'm giving you a little bit of this kind of social studies lesson. So if the people that work for the city don't know the law, then we run afoul of the law. Okay? Chief Taylor, Councilman Taylor.
Okay, so back to my question of working under Leo Parada. So I know for a fact that the, I don't know if he's director or whatever it is, the director of sewer and the director of environmental, they are on the work share program. So I go back to my original thing that I said is what is the message that we're sending each department? So you have Leo Parada coming in and you have the superintendent of highway coming in, but the other two are on a workforce program. And the big elephant in the room, like I said, is they get the $600 because that's basically what we're talking here is the $600. If the $600 federal money wasn't there, there'd be people fighting to come back to work. I don't want to be laid off. I'm not agreeing to anything. But for 9 weeks, they're going to get 600 hours extra. And then who knows after that if it's going to get voted. So how did you, out of that department, and I know there's other departments that I can give you because I did some research today, that how did you pick 2 people out of 4? And what happens if, God forbid, a sewer, something happens? So you give the sewer, they work Monday, Tuesday, they're off Wednesday, and then they work Thursday, Friday, or whatever their shifts it could be. Now there's a sewer emergency that happens Tuesday night or Wednesday night. How does that work? Because they can't come back for overtime, because if they come back for overtime, then they lose the work share program for 600 hours. And the director is off on the work share program. And he's the one that comes back and actually has to get the members back there to work and to find out what work needs to be done. So can you explain? And I know that's kind of long, but can you explain how you came out with 2 out of 4? Number one, and how do you deal with if something happens, especially the sewer department, where if guys come back, they're going to be out of the workforce program because they're only doing it for the 600 hours. We all know if we went out and asked everybody, we're going to lay you off for a day or 2. I think all the answers would be no if that's 600 hours. The 600 hours is the catcher to say, hey, someone makes $20 an hour. They bring home, that's 800 hours for 40 hours. So they take a day off. That's what, 160. They'll maybe get half of that, 80. So they get $680 for one day. That's pretty good. Where if we did it in the beginning and they were off for the whole week, they get whatever half or however they figure the benefits out and the 600.
Well, we can't, Chief, Councilman.
I know we can't go back. We can't go back.
We can't go back. That literally that ship
that
has
window's
sailed.
closed.
They made a determination not to exercise that. Can you please answer the primary question, Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Director, on the other one? What was your analysis and how did you determine 2 out of 4?
Emmanuel, did you want to take that?
I'm going to have to look back at what the conversation was around the DPW and look at the data there. I don't know if Sabrina, you have any context around how the management staff was selected for work share there.
Not in front of me, but we can certainly follow up.
But, okay, so what did you think we were going to talk about tonight? Can I ask that? Because these are questions that are pretty simple questions, that who's involved, what's going on. You know what I mean? These are simple. I don't get the idea of, well, we have to come back with that. We have to come back with that. Like, what did you think we were going to ask you?
We did not bring the spreadsheet of all of the employees with us tonight. As I said, we can follow up with you. I can appreciate you having questions on this, and we're happy to do that. But I think our perspective was that we were coming to speak to you guys about the program. That was our understanding. We did not expect to be going through this spreadsheet line by line for particular employees.
Okay, so next question. How many temps, to my understanding, the temps are still being paid? Is that correct?
Emmanuel?
Yes, we have some part-time, seasonal, and temporary employees that are still being paid. We went through an exercise where we laid off some of them, and we're compiling a list of other positions that are going to be eligible for layoff for the temporary lines. But yes, they're still being paid right now.
And how many temps are being paid? I guess internal auditor or treasurer, I guess that would be a question for you. How many temps are being paid today?
I saw 79 as of the 29th.
And do we know how long those 79 are going to be paid for? And why?
I do not.
Paid? Why weren't they the first ones to be knocked off?
I guess not. Actually, Councilman, if I may interject, I think the primary question is, do you folks realize there's a financial crisis occurring? Maybe that's what's happening. Do you realize there's a financial issue happening in the city?
We're acutely aware, Chairman, yes.
So I guess the question is, why would you continue to pay for temps at this time and not put them on, not lay them off so they can then go on to that, get paid from another source and then relieve some of the burden off the city? Why would you not do that? And then Vice Chair, after Councilman Taylor, Vice Chair Ron. Do you have an answer to that?
I mean, on temporary employees, it's certainly one of the things that has been discussed. I think I will not unilaterally say one way or the other whether temporary staff should be laid off first, because I think that many of our temp staff do serve critical functions as well.
Well, okay. I mean, that's you're very good at your answering by not answering. Vice Chair, then Councilman Taylor.
Oh, wait a minute, I got one other question that leads into that one. And then I'm done. Okay, so I saw that it went out for hiring for the seasonal employees for the pools and splash spots and the recreation departments, whatever. Why are we hiring seasonal employees but furloughing regular employees? Why would we hire seasonal employees?
Which seasonal employees are you referring to, Councilman?
What's that?
Just summer employees?
The summer employees are seasonal, like for Parks Department or DPW. They work through the summer and the fall, and then they're laid off. Or, you know what I mean? So why are we hiring seasonal employees when we're furloughing full-time employees? These are all questions that the people out there are talking about, because they work in departments and they don't understand, and they're asking me and I don't understand. So I don't know what to tell them. I don't know what to tell someone that's worked with the city for 28 years why they have to use a furlough day, and someone who has 2 minutes on the job is getting paid. Because once that $600, the $600, like I said, the elephant in the room, if Congress does not vote on that $600, come August 1st, there's going to be a lot of howling and screaming.
So can you, Madam Chief and Director, can you answer the question about why is the city in the process of hiring seasonal employees and at the same time putting together this 3-2 program and furlough program for full-time employees? Can you please explain that that opposite position? Can you explain that process? Did you guys talk to the team? The team said you thought about it and this is the way to go. What exactly happened? Can you please explain that?
Many of the seasonal employee positions that are posted right now or that we're considering are directly related to summer programming. Summer programming is, of course, very important to our city. This represents jobs for youth in our city. It also represents summer programming, which, as we know, we're trying to grapple with what the safest way to do that is. And yes, those things have been discussed with our teams. I know that we've had some previous conversations with various council members on this particular topic, as that we are considering both plans that may be in person or otherwise, but knowing that there's bandwidth required to pull these programs together for our youth either way.
Chief Operating Officer and Director, you're also assuming that money will be there in the upcoming budget, is that correct?
It would be dependent on the budget passing, yes, Chairman.
So I think you need to hang on to that, whether you hire anybody, because you're doing a big assumption right now, right? That you're looking to hire seasonal employees on one end. And I understand the whole job. I hear that whole statement. It's great. It's a great soundbite. And on the other end, full-time employees, you're looking to furlough or change their, change potentially their benefits, et cetera, et cetera. But you're also assuming that money's going to be there for next year and that revenue, right? So I think you need to just slow that train down, because I think first you need to get your plan together. So I strongly advise that. And I also want to mention, I noticed that recently there was, we spoke to one of the department heads, and we told them they should not hire a position right now because it's going to be defund the upcoming budget. Well, it's only be good for 30 days. And yet they're still moving forward hiring the position, which I find, once again, that type of behavior sends a powerful message to the council, the finance, and the people of Providence of basically arrogance. That's a general rule. So I want you to know that I'm going to once again tell the director of HR and yourself that if your department heads are hiring people at this point in time, they may want to think twice, because money will not be there for the upcoming budget. Do not assume it's going to be there. The administration
One last question, Chairman. I'm done. So I'm on the workforce program. I got 2 days off, Am I going to accumulate vacation and sick time?
Vacation is based on a yearly accrual. Sick time benefits accrue monthly. So yes, the employees will continue accruing sick time. Vacation time is granted every January. So this period will not affect vacation.
Even though I'm not working a month, I'm only going to work, let's say, I don't know. I'm not working a month. I'm going to be able to accumulate the sick time.
It's based on the time period, yes.
Okay. I'm done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Vice Chair?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for the COO. Is the sewer department considered an emergency department?
They do often have to respond to emergencies. Yes, Councilwoman.
Would you consider that department fully staffed?
You're asking whether or not I have vacant positions?
That's another way of saying it. Sure. Are they fully staffed or do you have vacant positions currently?
I don't have that in front of me right now, but I do know that the staff has been able to respond to issues.
HR director, is the sewer department fully staffed or do they have vacant positions?
I'm going to have to look at a vacancy report, but I know we provided one to the council fairly recently, so.
COO, do you understand the nature of their duties, that they need certain staff on hand to deal with an emergency? There has to be a foreman to oversight the work. There's certain technical requirements. Are you familiar with the requirements of those positions are?
Broadly, yes, Councilwoman.
Broadly. So if there's a sewer emergency and we have the sewer department on work share, will we be able to respond to an emergency?
In that the staff would be staggered among various shifts, yes.
Is the director of the sewer department on work share?
I would have to defer to Emmanuel on that.
I can give you the answer, yes.
Director, would you know the answer to that?
I didn't think that he was, but Councilman Taylor seems fairly certain that he is. I'm going to have to look at that sheet.
Councilman Taylor, do you have information that caused you to believe that the sewer director is on work share?
I do.
Can I ask the auditor?
Along with the environmental.
Can I ask the auditor, do you have any information that you could share with us, the COO's department sewer director as well as the environmental director? Are they on work share?
If you would give me a moment, I can pull it up on my computer.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience, Mr. Chair. I think this is an important conversation that we're having.
While the internal is looking for that, Chief Operating Officer and Director, has each department head that you actually have authority over submitted what is going to be, how they are going to function? Like what's their expectation? What's the matrix of, and what's their deliverables? How they're going to actually get the job done? Do they all say we're still going to be able to perform 100%, or there'll be diminished capacity in certain aspects?
You mean you are referring to an anticipation of June 22nd, yes?
Yes.
Yes, directors will be submitting that.
Right. So when will you be getting that, and when can you forward it to the internal auditor for review?
Directors are working on those plans this week and we'll be reviewing them following that. We will also be doing walkthroughs with all of these departments to ensure that their facilities are in the appropriate manner before staff returns. That's something we'll probably share in final in a few weeks.
Great. And I would suggest, you mentioned the 22nd, that's a good date because the council still will be deliberating the budget, and then we'll have to make appropriate we'll address appropriately what we need to in the budget. We're still gonna have the budget in our hands, so you'll still be in that cycle. I want you to be aware of that. Internal audit, do you have that answer the question yet?
You're saying in the sewer area?
Yes,
Vice Chair?
yes. I asked about sewer, I asked about environmental, but let's talk sewer right now, because to me, when a family has a backup into their home, it's an emergency, and we need a team to be able to go out in the middle of the night immediately to respond. So I think that it's important that we have a full staff component.
Do you have an answer, or do you need time?
I'm looking at the union people right now. Is he union or non-union?
So why don't we do this, instead of hunting and pecking,
That's okay. That's okay. I don't want to put any stress on the auditor. It is my understanding, I wouldn't have asked the question if I didn't know. It is my understanding that your emergency department directors are indeed on work share. It concerns me, it troubles me, it doesn't seem like it's efficient management. I'd like you to make, resolve that. Come up with a plan and share it with us so that we can understand what your thinking is.
So, do you have a response, Chief Operating Officer or Director?
And my response is that directors are working on their plans, and that's something that we can update with after they've submitted those plans.
But if the director is on work share, who's creating the plan for the emergency department, such as a sewer or an environmental? Who's creating their plan?
That individual would not, if they are on work share, would not be on work share 100% of the time and would still be available to work on this plan with the director.
Do you approve the director's plans?
Yes, along with HR.
Have you seen the sewer director's plan?
In anticipation of the 22nd, it is in development.
It's in development? When do you plan on having it fully developed?
I have answered this question previously.
You know what?
Ready in the next couple of weeks.
Humor me, please, Madam COO. When will you have your plan ready? It's in development. When will you have it ready?
In anticipation of the 22nd, plans submitted by directors are going to be submitted to us after they work on them this week. We will then be reviewing them. We will have the finals of those within the next 2 weeks.
In the next 2 weeks?
Yes.
You're planning to be operational on June 22nd?
Correct.
Okay. So what I'll do is just for the committee
That's a week
edification.
before your opening. I'm sorry.
Right.
That's a week
Well,
before your opening. You're going to have your plans ready. Thank you.
So what I was gonna do is I'm gonna ask them to call them all to come back the week of the 15th, late in the 15th, and we'll see what the plan is. You have the plan by then, right?
Great.
Chief Operating Officer?
Mira, tú dejaste la llave equivocada ahí abajo, tú dejaste la llave tuya y te llevaste la mía.
As Councilwoman Castillo just said, yeah. We're going to, what do you call it, right? So we're gonna call you back, we'll have you come back, but I have a follow-up question that I get the President Pro Tem. Vice Chair, you all set?
Sorry.
Vice Chair?
Okay, Councilor.
Okay. And then I just got to follow up. So I just wanted to ask you, just to get a little bit deeper into it. I look at, like, for example, the personnel supplement, and they plan on opening the zoo, right? And having the zoo functioning and working, right? How is it going to function this is why it's important that you have to let the superintendent and the Commissioner of Parks Commission put together their action plan. Because how is the zoo going to function if you, at this time, made the unilateral decision to lay off the lead zookeepers and the veterinarian and the zookeepers and all those folks there? Who's going to take care of the animals when they're all at work share? If you guys made this unilateral decision, this is why it's important that you have to, first of all, the directors that you have authority over, you need to empower them to really put, I'm glad you're telling them they're going to put a plan together. Look forward to that plan. But the superintendent of parks and water supply, they need to be able to put their own plan together based on the circumstances of their department. I recognize that what's driving you is monetary. I get it. You're trying to capture the COVID-19 money. I get that. How not to do layoffs, how not to put people out of work. We recognize that. But on the other end, you're also potentially debilitating whatever services the city does provide in the upcoming months. without having and not allowing those department head directors to be empowered to put together what is really a good action plan, how they're gonna actually function, like Vice Chair just mentioned about the sewer
Well
department.
said, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Well
And
said.
I'm hopping on the parks because I'm very concerned about that. Because you mentioned recreation. Are you folks planning on opening the pools?
We have not made a final decision on that yet, Chairman.
Okay, so that's important to know when they're gonna do it, because that also another thing, like, we're gonna have full-time employees be laid off, but yet we're gonna hire people. It just creates a different, and you say, no, we're trying to create jobs. Well, yeah, you're creating part-time jobs because you laid off full-time people. The whole thing is, that soundbite doesn't work. Just so you know, when people say, we're trying to create jobs in the summer, but you're laying off full-time people, no, that doesn't make sense. It's not gonna work politically. I just wanna let you know, it's not gonna work politically. You're gonna get hurt with it. Doesn't make sense. It's a bad soundbite, and it sends the wrong message. If you're trying to keep your full-time employees employed, then that should be your goal, but it shouldn't be at the expense. You shouldn't be trying to employ temporary employees and some employees at the expense of the full-time employees, because that's the wrong message. But I want to put that in your bonnet. I want you to think about that, because I know everybody's thinking this political soundbite, and it works, but it doesn't work. It's not going to work. Just like the Safe Street program, I appreciate that. I'm sure in some particular neighborhoods, it was a rousing success, but I know it's numerous places, it was an abysmal failure. Okay? And I understand administrations, not just yours, but all of them, only want to hear the positive, don't want to hear the constructive criticism, or sometimes the facts that are happening on the street. So, Pro Tem Correa, then Vice Chair.
Yeah, just quickly, just to go back, I mean, there has to be some type of decision made regarding the pools, because you're saying that you're not sure if we're going to open them or not, but yet we have employees that have been out for the last week, 2 weeks preparing the pools for opening. So there's got to be some type of a decision or discussion that you had on them. So I mean, that I don't understand why we would have people all working on them if we're not going to open them.
Chief Operating Director, can you answer this
Regardless, of course, regardless as to whether or not we were going to be opening them, the facilities themselves still require some maintenance. And so they've been attending to some of that maintenance. In anticipation of the fact that the decision is not yet made, we did not want to leave anything in disrepair.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I would just recommend that if it was possible, you're going to have them come back. Maybe we should have the Chief of Staff, Nicole Pollock, come back and see what she has to offer on this, as she's the Chief of Staff for the mayor and oversees just about everybody. Because right now, I mean, we got a lot of unanswered questions from both the COO and the Human Resource Director. I mean, they got all these plans and things, but they got no answers for us. So maybe if we were to bring in the Chief Operating Officer, the Chief of Staff, Nicole Pollock, maybe she can enlighten us into some of these questions that we have and give us some answers.
Thank you, President Pro Tem. Vice Chair?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a dangling question here for the COO once again. Can you tell me, have you laid off any public safety essential workers?
Not that I am aware of.
Not that you're aware of?
Not that I am aware of, but I do not oversee public safety. You would have to ask Commissioner Parr.
Okay, is he on the line or is he gone? Commissioner Parry, are you with us?
Commissioner Parry's still online.
I'm with you. I'm trying to unmute and unvideo.
It takes a while. I'm with you.
You both thought you got away.
No, I'm following.
Hanging in there.
Yeah. So do you have an answer to the Madam Vice Chair?
No sworn members of public safety have been laid off.
No sworn members.
Right. Both police and fire.
Okay. What about your departments? There must be workers that support the sworn members?
Yes, we have 100 or so civilians, and some of them have been selected for the work-share program.
Some of them, okay. So we want to see the logic behind that, please. Do you know how many of the 100?
I defer to Emmanuel.
I'm sorry?
I'm gonna have to defer to Emmanuel.
Emmanuel, you guys, you need all three of you. Who hasn't answered? Anybody?
So going down one by one of the public safety divisions, to my recollection, again, I don't have the list in front of me, but PEMA, there's no emergency management employees in this program. Telecommunications, I believe it's limited to a few crew members and no one in the 911 dispatch. I believe the switchboard operators are part of WorkShare. In police and fire, I think it's mostly clerical and administrative supports that are being placed on WorkShare. But again, I will forward the list to the internal auditor for review.
And PEOs are included in that.
And public, yes, yep, and parking enforcement officers, that's right.
So nobody's giving out tickets in the city, I guess, huh?
Well, that's not accurate. It's not a complete reduction in staffing. It's a 40% reduction for the PEOs for varying reasons.
Okay, all right. So I want to see who has been, from the public safety workers, essential workers, who's been laid off. Please make that available to our auditor. But I guess I'd like to conclude. I think we've beaten this to death. We're not getting answers. We've been asking them for weeks. And quite honestly, it's very frustrating. It's tiring. And, you know, in summary, absent a plan that's transparent and comprehensive, we don't have, and you know, from the get-go, you keep saying that your concern is keeping our employees safe. No one disagrees with that. Safety of staff is extremely important, and we all want that. However, absent a plan, you compromise this. You're compromising the services to the taxpayers, to the city of Providence, and you're also compromising the financial well-being of the city of Providence, because you're wasting money. Absent a plan, we have no clue as to the financial soundness of the decisions that you're making and how it negatively impacts our departments, our city services, and quite frankly, puts our labor force at risk. That's it, Mr. Chair. I'm done on this topic, I think. I don't think we can beat it. I don't think we can beat this up anymore.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Council, Pro Tem Correa? He's muted. Did we mute him or he muted?
No, I forgot to lower my hand. I'm good, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Pro Tem. And then Internal Auditor? Internal Auditor, do you have the mic?
Oh, I'm sorry. My computer was frozen, so I can confirm that those two employees are on a 4-1 schedule. 20% of them are, 20% of their salary, they will be part of the work share.
Madam Vice Chair, did you get the answer?
The sewer and environmental?
The sewer and the environmental, yes.
That doesn't seem like it makes any sense at all to me.
So what I'm going to suggest to the committee, and also Madam Chief Operating Officer and Director, we're going to bring you before the committee again next week. Knowing that the budget's pending, I think, and first of all, I think it behooves all of you to present exactly in specifics what exactly is what the city plans on doing in specific detail, itemized, position by position, etc. I know there's some deliverables we asked for tomorrow, which I know the Director of HR says he has, the information you provided to DLT and etc. You should be able to also get, want you to go to the personnel supplement and give us each position, who's doing 3, 2, 4, 1. We need that by tomorrow also. But we're going to bring you back. What I'm just going to bring you back for the Finance Committee. Committee members, do you want to? We'll have them for next week or later on in the week. What's your pleasure?
Whatever you think is appropriate, Mr. Chair. I yield to you.
we do this? Right now, let's just let's probably make a motion to continue, but if Madam Chief Operating Officer and Director, plan on coming back to the committee with more specifics. And I think it's important that we have a better understanding from your department heads, the ones that you do have authority over and the ones that you don't, how their departments and units are going to function specific to the public. Because right now, just so everybody understands, unfortunately, the COVID-19 isn't going anywhere right now. It's just not. It's going to be part of our life for a little while. So we have an obligation now to figure out how, whatever city services are out there that these taxpayers are paying, how we can provide to them. And also, by the way, you may have to make some serious decisions in financial on the other end. The budget's still before this committee. The budget will not leave this committee until we get all those specific answers. Mr. Mancini, I'm going to let you know right now that this budget will not leave this committee until this committee and this council knows exactly what is going on in city government today and what's being proposed in detail. So I'm letting you know, so no one says it's a big surprise. Okay? I want you to know that now. And I'll tell you something, we are under adverse circumstances. We're on a financial strain, and your departments and stuff need to justify why we should give you money. And I'll tell you something, your folks are not doing a good job. You're not giving us the understanding of the support. Now, I understand there's some folks on the body that may want to just politically, they're going to do what you ask, but that's not the point here. We have to do the people's business. All of you need to start being forthright and really expressing in detail, specifics, what's going on. So I'm letting you know as a courtesy and on the record. As you know, the 9th is the public hearing, I believe. Is that right, Mr. Mancini?
That is correct. 1 week from tomorrow.
Right, that's just for the levy, by the way. That's for us, just the levy. Which means we will not be raising taxes. Committee members know that, and councilmen. We will not be raising taxes on the people of Providence. So the point is, you're not going to get additional revenue. That's it. We're not raising taxes.
I agree.
So I want you to, everybody understand, on the record, the city council, this council, this committee is not raising city taxes. So that means this budget we need to get serious about what's going on, and we need to get serious about what we're doing with the services of the city. I have the vice chair, then Mr. Mancini. Vice chair?
I just wanted to thank you for explaining that. If we pass the levy, our commitment is we're not raising taxes, but we're making no commitment to approve the budget that's been put before us for the spending plan. Is that correct, Mr. Chair?
You are correct, Vice Chair. It would be financially irresponsible for this committee and this council to approve the budget that has been submitted to this body as it's presented.
And
on the expense side.
And it's troubling to me that we have been asking time and time again for information. I keep looking at a letter that's on my desk each meeting we start that's dated early May, asking for a laundry list of material that we simply can't get. It's frustrating. It's extremely frustrating.
And just so my council colleagues and committee members, just so you understand, the levy is what sets the taxes, and the tax bills will go out on time without a tax increase. The expense side is how you spend it. Just understand, councils and the council has the authority and has in the past years, working with the administration, has passed the spending plan, but then throughout the year modified the spending plan. You never touch the levy. Once you do, it's over. So the idea that for the uninitiated, do not be misinformed that you have to pass, when you pass the levy, you have to pass the spending plan. No, the levy sets the tax rate, and we will have the tax bills given out at the appropriate time for the administration's request. There will not be a tax increase, but the spending plan will be adjusted accordingly based on the financial crisis the city is facing. So I want everybody to understand that. Do not panic about the spending, because you always can modify spending plans along the fiscal year as long as you don't go over the amount of revenue you claim you're going to receive. And the council never has done it and never will over, not pass a balanced budget. If anything, this budget will be balanced, but it'll probably balance into the pot, into more of a surplus budget versus a deficit budget. Based on the financial unknowns facing the city, the state, and the country in the upcoming years. And that's being financially responsible. So I think I said everything. Vice Chair, you all set? Everybody is set?
I am, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Well done.
All right, so I want, Mr. Mancini,
Chairman?
you understand? Yes, Mr. Mancini? Yes, sir?
I will. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the council. I know it's been a long evening, and this evening was one of those evenings where I did have many opportunities to speak, but in support of your statement regarding a no tax increase, Mr. Chairman, you know the budget was submitted as such, a no tax increase, and I fully support the council's commitment to getting the levy passed and getting the tax bills out, as revenue is important. And I believe, on behalf of the budget, as the city's chief financial officer, I am endeavoring to present to you the budget that was proposed by the mayor. And we have prepared departments for those budgetary matters and those questions surrounding the budget. We will continue to endeavor to do that. I will be certain that we will be here with information that the council needs. It is important that the budget does get adopted. I agree with you that the tax bills are on their way after a public hearing. I'm working with your internal auditor and your treasurer to arrive at the appropriate budget adoption date as to the levy. And I can assure you that finance, and under my direction, will supply you with any information you need to complete this process in a timely and respectful manner. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mancini. Vice Chair, you have anything else, or your hand's just up by accident?
My
Vice
hand's
Chair.
up by accident. Sorry. Put it down. I've said enough.
Thank you all for, Mr. Almonte, do you have any questions, internal auditor, treasurer? All right. With that, then I want to thank everybody for participating. We'll be bringing you all back again. So first, we need a motion to continue all the items to the next finance meeting. By the item, including this item too, all items on the agenda this evening to continue to the next finance meeting.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
By Vice Chair, next motion, second by Councilman Taylor. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No more business before this honorable committee. I want to thank everybody for participating. Motion adjourned by Vice Chair, second by?
Second.
Councilman Taylor and Councilwoman Castillo. Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.